The steel buttstock of her own rifle slammed into the concrete pad 6 inches from her boot, and Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker spat on the ground between them like he was marking territory. "Go paint your nails, Barbie. This ain't a salon."
For Marines behind him laughed the way men laugh when they have already decided that the woman in front of them is part of the entertainment. One of them, a corporal with a fresh USMC tattoo still scabbing on his forearm, actually slapped his knee. The brass shell casing she had been arranging in a neat row by her shooting mat went flying when Ducker kicked the open ammunition box on his way past her. 48 rounds of match-grade .308 Winchester rolling across hot concrete in the 7:47 morning sun. The woman in the faded red windbreaker did not flinch, did not bend down to pick up the brass, did not look at the 4 Marines. She looked at Ducker. Just at Ducker. For exactly 2 seconds. The kind of 2 seconds that, if you have ever served under a real one, you recognize immediately. The kind of 2 seconds where a person is not reacting. She is measuring. Then she bent down, picked up her rifle from where Ducker had dropped it, checked the bore, checked the bolt, set it down on the bench gently the way you set down something that has saved your life more than once, and went back to her morning. The old man working the range tower, Ray Castellanos, 68 years old, 2 tours in Vietnam, hadn't smiled at a customer in maybe 12 years, looked up from his coffee, looked at the woman in the red windbreaker, looked at Staff Sergeant Ducker, and something in his face moved, just barely, the way a man's face moves when he realizes he is about to watch something he will tell his grandchildren about. He did not say a word. He just set his coffee down, and he waited. Now hold on. Hold on right there. You just watched a Marine, and I say that word with the respect it deserves, because I wore the uniform for 26 years before the Corps put me out to pasture. You just watched a Marine make the single worst decision of his career. And I am going to tell you how I know that. I know that because the woman he just put his hands on, the woman in the red windbreaker who didn't flinch when his boot came down on her brass, I trained her. Not personally. I want to be honest with you about that. I never put a rifle in her hands myself. But the man who did was a friend of mine for 31 years, and he taught her the way I taught him, and that means when I look at her standing on that concrete pad in Oceanside, California, on a Saturday morning in October, I know exactly what Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is about to find out. My name is Cole Hennessy. Most folks who served under me just called me Gunny, and you can call me that too. I spent 14 of my 26 years teaching marksmanship at the Scout Sniper Instructor School in Quantico, Virginia, before a piece of shrapnel from a road in Helmand Province decided my left knee had given enough to the Republic. My wife Maggie says I retired. I tell her I was relocated. She lets me have that. I tell stories now. That's what an old jarhead does when the body won't let him teach anymore. I sit on the porch in the evenings, and I pour 2 fingers of something my doctor told me not to drink, and I tell the stories of the people I served with, and the people they served with, and the people whose stories were given to me by men and women who can't tell them anymore because of where they're buried or because of what they're not allowed to say. The woman in the red windbreaker has a name. I am going to give it to you now, the whole thing, the way she earned it, because she earned every syllable. Senior Chief Petty Officer Lennox Marie Herov. United States Navy. Retired. 8 months ago, she walked out of a closed ceremony at Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, with 19 years, 4 months, and 11 days of service behind her, and a folded flag, and a ribbon rack that, if you knew how to read it, and most people don't, would tell you exactly what kind of woman just walked off that parade deck. Staff Sergeant Ducker, who has 20 years in the United States Marine Corps and a distinguished rifleman's badge on his Class A uniform back home in his closet, cannot read that ribbon rack. He has never been cleared to. He is about to find out the hard way. So pour yourself something. Get comfortable. This is going to take us about an hour and a half, and I am not going to rush it, because Lennox didn't rush a single shot in her entire career, and the least I can do is tell her story at the speed she would have approved of. Let me take you back to that Saturday morning. 6:15 a.m. Vista, California, about 15 miles inland from the range. There's a woman waking up in a small stucco house with a lemon tree in the front yard and a Jeep Wrangler in the driveway that has seen better decades. This is how it started. 6:15 a.m. Vista, California, about 15 miles inland from the Pacific, in a neighborhood of small stucco houses built in the late 70s for working-class families who wanted a yard and a garage and a view of the hills if they were lucky. Lennox Marie Herov was not lucky in the conventional sense. She had bought the house cash in March of this year, 8 days after the closed ceremony at Coronado, with money she had been saving since she was 23 years old and deploying for the first time. The realtor had asked her what she did for a living. She had said, "Navy." The realtor had asked her what she did in the Navy. She had said, "I'm retired." And that had been the end of that conversation. The lemon tree in the front yard was older than the house. It had been there when she bought the place, scraggly and overwatered by the previous owners, and she had spent the first month putting it back to something honest. It was producing now, maybe 40 lemons on the lower branches, yellow and heavy, and pulling the limbs down toward the dry grass. She picked one on her way to the Jeep, held it up to her nose, smelled it, put it in her windbreaker pocket. The Jeep was a 2008 Wrangler, Sahara trim. Original tan paint mostly faded to the color of bone. She had bought it used in 2011 from a Master Chief who was deploying and didn't want to leave it sitting in a driveway. It had 312,000 miles on it. The transmission had been rebuilt twice. The soft top didn't seal anymore on the passenger side and let in the rain every February. She loved the Jeep the way some people love a dog. It had taken her across the country 4 times. It had slept her through 2 breakups. It started on the first turn every single morning, which was more than Lennox could say about most of the men she had dated. She put her rifle case in the back, behind the driver's seat, strapped down with 2 ratchet straps the way her father had taught her when she was 9 years old, and they were going elk hunting in eastern Oregon. Her father was dead now, 12 years, pancreatic cancer. He had taught her how to shoot before he had taught her how to drive, which is the kind of thing that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of man he was. The rifle in the case was a Remington 700 in .308 Winchester, 26-inch heavy barrel,
Bell and Carlson stock, weathered to a soft gray. Leupold Mark IV scope on top, 6.5 to 20 power, milled-out reticle. The rifle had belonged to Marcus Holloway. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Holloway had been her spotter for 3.5 years, and her closest friend for 6. He had given the rifle to her on the day he was discharged for medical reasons in 2019, the same week his right leg was amputated below the knee from an IED in Helmand Province. He had said, "She shoots better than I ever did. Take her home." And then he had laughed the way Marcus laughed, which was with his whole chest, and he had told her not to make it weird. Marcus was alive. Marcus lived in Boise, Idaho, now, with his wife Teresa and their 2 boys, and he ran a small gunsmithing business out of his garage, and he called Lennox every other Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific. He was going to call her tomorrow. She did not know yet that he would be calling her about something else entirely. She put a small green Stanley thermos of coffee in the passenger footwell. Black, no sugar, the way she had drunk it for 19 years. Her dope book, the small leather notebook where she recorded every shot she had ever taken in training and in combat, every wind call, every elevation correction, every range, every result, that went in the glove compartment. She did not need it today. She was going to a civilian range to shoot at 100 yards in good light. She did not need a dope book to put rounds on paper at 100 yards. She brought it anyway. She had brought it everywhere for 19 years, and she was not going to stop now because she had retired. She locked the front door. She got in the Jeep. She turned the key. The Jeep started on the first turn. She backed out of the driveway and pointed it west toward the ocean and the range and Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker, who at that moment was 31 miles south of her on the I-5, drinking his second Monster Energy of the morning out of a can he had crushed flat against the steering wheel of his lifted Ford F-250. Let me tell you about Staff Sergeant Ducker. Michael Ducker was 38 years old. He had enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in September of 2003, 2 years after September 11th, when he was 18 years old and angry and looking for a place to put it. The Corps had taken his anger and shaped it into a competent infantryman. He had deployed to Iraq in 2005. He had deployed to Afghanistan in 2008. He had been a good Marine in both places. I want to be honest with you about that, because the worst stories are the ones where the bad guy is just bad. Ducker had moments in his service when he was the man you would want next to you. He carried a wounded corporal out of an alley in Ramadi in March of 2005, took a piece of shrapnel in his calf doing it, and never put himself in for the award. That was Ducker at his best. But Ducker at his best stopped existing somewhere around 2014. I have watched this happen to good men more times than I can count. He hit a ceiling. He was not going to make Master Sergeant. He was not going to go to selection. He was not going to be a scout sniper, which had been his dream since he was 19 years old, because he had failed the entry course in 2011, and the Corps does not give you many second chances at that particular dream. The Corps moved him to Weapons Training Battalion at Camp Pendleton, where they put him in charge of teaching young Marines how to qualify with their service rifles. It was a good billet. It was honorable work. Teaching young Marines to shoot is some of the most important work the Corps does. Ducker hated every minute of it.
He hated it because every day he had to look at young men who were going to deploy and do the thing he had wanted to do, while he stood on a square range at 500 yards and taught them how to hold a sling. He hated it because his ex-wife had left him in 2016 and taken their daughter, Madison, to Reno, Nevada, where her new boyfriend sold real estate. He hated it because his back hurt every morning and his knees hurt every afternoon, and his command was full of Marines younger than him who had done things he had not. He had a distinguished rifleman's badge. That was real. He had earned it in 2009 at the All-Marine matches. It was the one thing he could still hold up and say, "I am better than you at this." And he held it up a lot. On Saturday mornings, when he was not working, Ducker went to a civilian range at Oceanside called West Haven Shooting Sports. He went there because the Camp Pendleton range required range fees and reservations and a chain of command. West Haven was $22 for the morning, no questions asked, and the parking lot was full of guys like him, current and former Marines, who wanted to shoot without the Corps watching. He went there with 4 of his Marines from the training battalion: Corporal Anthony Hayes, 22, Corporal James Reyes, 23, Lance Corporal Tyler Brennan, 20, and Lance Corporal Devin Walsh, 21. They worshipped him. He fed on it. This particular Saturday morning, Ducker had told them in the parking lot, before they walked onto the range, that he was going to make this fun. He had not specified what he meant by that. They had laughed anyway. That is how it works when you are 20 years old, and the man who writes your fitness report is feeling lively. The range opened at 7 a.m. Ducker and his Marines were the first ones through the gate. They took the 4 bays closest to the tower, bays 1 through 4. They set up loud. Energy drinks on the bench. Bluetooth speaker playing country music too loud for the range rules. Ray Castellanos at the tower had asked them to turn it down. Ducker had turned it down by exactly 1 notch and grinned at Ray and said, "How's that, old-timer?" Ray had not answered. Ray had gone back to his coffee. Ray Castellanos was 68 years old. He had been the range master at West Haven Shooting Sports for 19 years. Before that, he had spent 22 years in the United States Marine Corps. Before that, he had spent 2 tours in Vietnam as a rifleman with the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, in places whose names he still did not say out loud even when his wife asked. Ray had seen 10,000 Staff Sergeant Duckers walk through his range in 19 years. He had a policy about them. The policy was, let them hang themselves. Ray did not need to throw anyone off his range. The range threw them off on its own, eventually, because men like Ducker always did something stupid in the end, and Ray was patient. At 7:43 a.m., Lennox Marie Herov pulled into the gravel parking lot at West Haven Shooting Sports in her 2008 Jeep Wrangler. She parked under the only tree in the lot, a half-dead Italian cypress that gave maybe 4 feet of shade. She got out. She took the rifle case from the back. She locked the Jeep. She walked toward the office. Ray saw her coming through the office window before she walked in. He saw the way she walked. He saw the way she carried the rifle case, low, by the handle, balanced, the way a person carries a tool they have carried 10,000 times. He saw the windbreaker. He saw the dust on the boots. He saw the ponytail. He did not yet see the small navy anchor tattoo on the inside of her right forearm, because the windbreaker's sleeve was down. But Ray had been around long enough to know what he was looking at, and what he was looking at made him sit up a little straighter in his chair. She came into the office. "Morning." "Morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" "One bay. 200 yards if you have it. 100 if you don't." "200 is taken this morning. I can put you on bay 4 at 100. "That's fine." $22. "Sign the waiver, please."
She signed. He watched her hand. Steady. The signature was small and tight, and ended with a clean downstroke, no flourish. She handed him a credit card. He ran it. Lennox M. Herov. He noted the spelling. Unusual name. He did not ask.
"Bay 4. Down the path on your left. You'll be next to Bay 3. Heads up, ma'am. Bay 1 through 4 have a group this morning."
Marines from Pendleton off duty. They're a little loud.
She nodded. "Understood. Anything you need, you holler. Tower Mike is on channel 1. "Thank you, sir." That word, sir, landed on Ray a particular way. Civilians did not say, sir, to him anymore. Marines did. Active and retired.
He watched her walk out of the office and down the gravel path toward Bay 4 with her rifle case in her left hand and her thermos in her right, and he picked up the phone on the wall behind his desk and dialed a number he had not dialed in 8 months.
The number was for Cameron Brooks. Master Chief Petty Officer Cameron Brooks, United States Navy, retired.
Cameron lived in Vista, 6 miles from West Haven, and he came to the range every Saturday at around 9:30 to buy his weekly box of .45 ACP and complain about the weather. Ray and Cameron had been friends for 11 years.
The phone rang 4 times. Cameron picked up. "Castellanos, you're up early." "Cameron, you coming by today?" "I was gonna roll in around 9:30. Why?"
Ray looked through the office window at Bay 4, where Lennox had just set her rifle case down on the bench and was unlatching it with the calm of a person who was about to perform a ritual she had performed 10,000 times.
"You might want to come by a little earlier." "What's going on?" "There's a woman on Bay 4. Red windbreaker. Remington 700.308. Looks like a custom build. She just called me sir on the way in."
There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long pause.
"What'd she look like?" 40 maybe. Dark blonde, ponytail. Scar through the right eyebrow. Walks like she's done this before."
Another pause. Longer.
"Ray, I'll be there in 20 minutes.
The line went dead. Ray hung up the phone. He looked back out the window at Bay 4. Lennox had the rifle out now. She was checking the bore with a small flashlight, the way you do when you have not shot a rifle in 8 months, and you want to be sure no spider has decided to take up residence. She was talking to the rifle. Ray could not hear what she was saying.
He did not need to. He knew that conversation. Every Marine he had ever served with had had it at one point or another. It was the conversation you have with a tool that has kept you alive, when you have not picked it up in a while, and you want to apologize for the absence. At 7:46 a.m., Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker, on Bay 1, finished his second monster energy of the morning, crushed the can flat against the bench, and looked down the line of bays. He saw the red windbreaker. He saw a woman alone. He smiled the smile that, 22 years from now, he would still see in his dreams. And he started walking. Now I want you to stop for a second, because I am about to let Staff Sergeant Ducker walk down that line of bays. And once he starts walking, this story is going to move faster than some of you are going to be comfortable with. So before he gets there, I want to tell you 3 things. And I want you to remember them, because they are going to matter in about 9 minutes. The first thing. When a real shooter walks onto a range, you can spot her before she ever touches her rifle. It is not about the gear. Gear is the cheapest thing on a range. Anybody with a credit card and a YouTube subscription can put together a rifle that looks like it belongs in a magazine. What you cannot buy is the way a person sets down their case, the way they unlatch it, the way they handle the bolt, the way they check the bore, the way they treat the rifle when they think nobody is watching. Lennox Herov, on Bay 4, was being watched by exactly 2 people who knew what they were looking at. Ray Castellanos at the tower, and an old master chief named Cameron Brooks, who was at that very moment putting his boots on in a kitchen 6 miles away because Ray had called him. That was it. 2 men in the entire state of California understood what was about to walk onto that range. Everyone else, Ducker, his 4 young Marines, the 6 other shooters on the line, they saw a woman in a faded red windbreaker. They saw a target. They did not see what she was. That is almost always how it goes. The most dangerous person in any room is almost never the loudest one. In 19 years of teaching young Marines at Quantico, I had a rule. I told every class on day 1, when you walk into a bar, or a gas station, or a parking lot, and you are trying to figure out who in there can hurt you, do not look at the biggest guy. Do not look at the guy with the most tattoos. Do not look at the guy who is yelling. Look for the quiet one in the corner who is watching the door. That is the one who will end you. Every single time. The loud ones are loud because they have to be. The quiet ones are quiet because they don't. The second thing. I want to talk about Lennox's rifle for a minute because I am going to need you to understand it before the shooting starts. That Remington 700 was not a stock rifle. Marcus Holloway had spent 4 years modifying it before he gave it to her. The barrel was a Krieger heavy contour, hand-lapped, 26 inches, 1 in 11 twist. The trigger was a tinny set to 2 pounds, 3 ounces. The betting had been done by a man in Phoenix, Arizona, named Reuben Falk, who only takes about 12 rifles a year and charges what he wants. The scope was a Leupold Mark IV with elevation and windage turrets that had been zeroed at 100 yards in March of 2019 in Coronado, and Lennox had not had to re-zero that scope a single time in the intervening 5 years, because nobody had touched it but her. When you hear, in about 9 minutes, that she put 5 rounds through the same hole at 100 yards, I do not want you to think that it is impossible. I want you to understand it is not impossible. It is what that rifle does in those hands on a calm morning with match-grade ammunition. It is what the rifle was built to do.
Marcus Holloway built it for a person he loved like a sister to do exactly that, on exactly the kind of morning where someone needed to be reminded that the universe still has rules.
The third thing.
I want to tell you what a senior chief petty officer in the United States Navy actually is, because most of you watching this are not military, and the rank means very little to you, and I need you to understand it before Ducker opens his mouth.
In the United States Navy, the enlisted ranks go from E1, which is Seaman Recruit, up to E9, which is Master Chief Petty Officer. Senior Chief is E8. It is one step below the top.
To make Senior Chief in the United States Navy in a special warfare community, you have to have done, and survived, things that the average American cannot picture. It takes, on average, 15 to 17 years.
It requires a record of leadership, of combat performance, of mentorship, of administrative excellence, of physical conditioning that does not degrade with age, and of a kind of quiet competence that the Navy specifically selects for at the highest enlisted levels.
There are not many senior chiefs in the Navy. There are fewer senior chiefs in naval special warfare. There are very, very few female senior chiefs in naval special warfare, because the pipeline for women in that community only opened in a meaningful operational way around 2016, and Lennox Herov was one of the first 3 women to be assigned in that capacity, in a role I am not going to describe further because the role is still classified, and she would not want me to.
Staff Sergeant Ducker, the Marine who was at that moment walking toward her on Bay 4, was an E6, 2 ranks below her. In a different service, yes. The Navy and the Marine Corps do not have a chain of command over each other in a civilian parking lot in Oceanside. But in the world she came from, the world he had failed to enter in 2011 when he washed out a Scout Sniper basic course, she was 3 universes above him. She had operated alongside Marines of his exact specialty. She had trained Marines of his exact specialty. There is, somewhere in a Quantico filing cabinet, a thank you letter signed by a Marine Lieutenant Colonel that mentions, by call sign, the work Lennox Herov did in support of a Marine Special Operations team in 2017. Ducker has never seen that letter. He never will. But she has met Marines who served under that Lieutenant Colonel. She has had coffee with them. She has carried their friends' names tattooed on the inside of her left bicep, under the windbreaker, where Ducker cannot see them. He does not know any of this. He cannot know any of this. The whole point of what she did for 19 years was that men like him would never know. That is what makes what is about to happen so beautiful, and so terrible, and so necessary.
All right. I have kept you waiting long enough. Let me put you back on Bay 4. 7:47 a.m. Saturday morning. West Haven Shooting Sports, Oceanside, California. Ray Castellanos is setting his coffee down. Lennox Marie Herov is laying out 48 rounds of federal gold medal match in a neat row on the corner of his shooting bench, brass facing the same direction, the way her father taught her when she was 9. And Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is 6 steps away from the worst decision of his life. Let's watch. 6 steps. That is how far Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker had to walk from the back of Bay 1 to the front of Bay 4. 6 steps on hot concrete, in tan 511 tactical pants, and a black t-shirt 2 sizes too tight across the chest, with a distinguished rifleman's badge tattooed on the inside of his right forearm. Not the official one. The official one was in a frame in his bedroom in Oceanside, but a copy of it, in black ink, done by a tattoo artist in Carlsbad in 2012. He liked to flex that forearm when he gripped a rifle. He was flexing it now. His 4 Marines watched him go. Corporal Hayes elbowed Corporal Reyes. Lance Corporal Brennan pulled out his phone. He did not record yet. He was waiting to see if it would be worth recording. Lance Corporal Walsh, the youngest, 21 years old, 6 months out of boot camp, looked uncomfortable. Walsh would matter later. I am telling you that now, so that when his name comes back, you remember it. Lance Corporal Devin Walsh, the one who looked uncomfortable. Lennox did not look up. She had her rifle on the bench. She had the bolt open. She had the magazine seated. She had the Federal gold medal match laid out in a row of 48 rounds along the right edge of the bench, brass facing left, the way her father taught her. She had her eye protection on. She had her ear protection around her neck, not yet on her ears. She was reading the wind. There was a small piece of orange surveyor's tape tied to the top of the target frame at 100 yards, and she was watching it move. It was moving almost not at all, maybe 2 miles an hour, left to right, switching occasionally. A morning so calm that, in her old job, she would have considered it a gift. She heard him coming. She had heard him before he started walking. She had heard him from Bay 1 the moment he and his Marines pulled into the parking lot, because Lennox Herov could identify the brand of a man from 40 feet away by the sound of his voice, and she had clocked Ducker as a problem at 7:01 a.m. when his Bluetooth speaker started playing country music at the wrong volume. She had not looked at him then. She had not looked at him when he walked past her bay the first time, at 7:20, on his way to the Porta-John. She had not looked at him when he laughed too loud at something one of his corporals said at 7:34. She was not going to look at him now. She was going to let him arrive. He arrived. He stopped at the front of Bay 4, on her right side, 2 feet from her shoulder, and stood there for a beat the way a man stands when he wants to be acknowledged. She did not acknowledge him. She racked the bolt forward. Smooth, quiet, closed. She did not chamber around. The magazine was seated, but the chamber was empty. She put her left hand on the front of the rifle, and her right hand on the bench beside it, and she breathed once, slow, and she waited. "That's a nice rifle, sweetheart." She did not answer. "I said that's a nice rifle. You know how to use it?" She turned her head. Just her head, not her body. She looked at him for the first time. She gave him exactly the same 2 seconds she would give him 3 minutes later, when this was over. A measured, unhurried, professional look, the kind of look a doctor gives a patient who has just described a symptom that the doctor has already diagnosed. Then she turned her head back toward the target. "I do." "Yeah. Where'd you learn?" "My father." "Your father.
That's cute. Your father a shooter?
He was.
Was. So he's dead. Sorry to hear that, sweetheart. Mine too.
She did not respond to the
Sweetheart.
She did not respond to the assumption. She put her hand on the bolt handle.
I'm going to start my string now. I'd appreciate the space.
Ducker laughed.
It was not a real laugh. It was a performance laugh, pitched over his shoulder toward Bay 1, so that his Marines would hear it. They heard it.
Corporal Hayes laughed back. Lance Corporal Brennan raised his phone.
Your string. Look at you. You know what a string is. Sweetheart, this is a Marine Corps range on Saturday mornings. You know that, right? You see those boys back there? Those are Marines. I'm a Marine. We come here to shoot. You came here to what? Take pictures for Instagram? Show your boyfriend you're a badass? She did not answer. Where'd you get that rifle, sweetheart? That's not a girl's rifle. That's a man's rifle. Somebody give it to you?
She did not answer. He took a step closer. This is the moment. I want you to mark this moment, because in a courtroom 3 months from now, in a deposition that Staff Sergeant Ducker is going to give under oath in a civil proceeding he is going to lose, this is the moment his lawyer is going to point to and say, "My client did not initiate physical contact." And the lawyer is going to be lying, and everyone in the room is going to know he is lying. Because there is going to be a video. Lance Corporal Brennan's video. The one he was about to start recording. The one that, in 11 days, would have 4.2 million views on a platform Brennan would deeply regret posting it to. Ducker took the step. He was now 18 inches from her right shoulder. He reached down. He put his right hand on the stock of her rifle, just behind the action, on the wood Marcus Holloway had bedded for her in his garage in Boise. He picked the rifle up off the bench. He picked up her rifle. I want you to understand something. On a shooting range, any shooting range, civilian, military, foreign, domestic, you do not touch another person's firearm. Ever. Under any circumstance. Without permission. It is the single most universal rule in the culture of shooting, and it is universal because the consequences of violating it are catastrophic in every direction. You do not touch another shooter's rifle. You do not move it. You do not pick it up to check it out. You do not hand it to your buddy. You ask, and if the answer is no, you walk away. Ducker picked up her rifle. He lifted it off the bench by the stock, with one hand, in a way that told everyone watching that he had never properly carried a precision rifle in his life, because a precision rifle is not lifted by the stock with one hand. You support the friend, you respect the optic, you do not swing $12,000 of glass and steal around like a broomstick. He lifted it. He looked at it. He made a face.
Bell and Carlson stock. Krieger barrel? Sweetheart, this rifle is worth more than your car. Who paid for this?
Your boyfriend? He was holding her rifle. He was holding Marcus Holloway's rifle. He was holding the rifle that had been carried by Lennox Herov in the back of a helicopter over the Hindu Kush in February of 2018 on a night when 3 men who are alive today would not have been alive in the morning if she had missed the shot she did not miss. He was holding it by the stock, with one hand, in the wrong way, while calling her sweetheart. And then he did the thing. He let go. He did not throw it. I want to be precise about this, because in the deposition his lawyer will spend 40 minutes on the difference between throwing and dropping. Ducker did not throw the rifle. He opened his hand. He let it fall from a height of about 3.5 feet onto concrete, but first, the way a man drops a beer he is done with. The buttstock of Marcus Holloway's Remington 700 hit the concrete pad of Bay 4 at 7:47 a.m. and 41 seconds, 6 inches from Lennox Marie Herov's right boot, with a sound that Ray Castellanos heard from the tower 40 yards away, and that made him stand up out of his chair for the first time in 19 years on the job. Ducker spat on the ground between them. "Go paint your nails, Barbie. This ain't a salon." And his 4 Marines laughed. And he kicked the open ammunition box on his way past her, and 48 rounds of match-grade .308 Winchester went rolling across hot concrete in the 7:47 a.m. sun. And Lennox Marie Herov did not move. For exactly 4 seconds, she did not move. I want to tell you what was happening in those 4 seconds, because what was happening in those 4 seconds is the entire story. She was not deciding what to do. She had already decided what to do. She was waiting for her hands to stop wanting to do something else. In 19 years and 4 months and 11 days of service in the United States Navy, Lennox Herov had been trained, by men whose names are not in any unclassified document, to do a specific thing with her hands when a man put them on her or on her equipment. That thing was not. Wait 4 seconds. That thing was measured in fractions of a second and ended with a man on the ground in a configuration he would not easily recover from. She knew how to do that thing. She had done that thing in operational settings more than once. Her hands wanted to do that thing now. Her hands were, in those 4 seconds, asking her permission. She did not give them permission. Because Lennox Herov was 41 years old. She was 8 months retired. She was standing on a civilian range in Oceanside, California, on a Saturday morning, and she had not signed up for the rest of her life to be defined by what she did to a Marine staff sergeant in a parking lot in front of 4 young men who were going to remember it for the rest of their lives. She had options. She knew her options. Her options included walking away, and she considered it in second one. Her options included calling the police, and she considered it in second two. Her options included reporting Ducker to his command at Camp Pendleton, where she had 3 personal contacts at field grade or above who would have ended his career by Monday at noon, and she considered it in second 3. In second 4, she chose the option none of those things touched. She bent down. She picked up the rifle. She did not look at Ducker. She did not look at his Marines. She checked the bore. Clear. She checked the bolt. Clean. She checked the scope. Solid. Marcus had built the rifle to survive worse than this. The rifle was fine. The rifle was forgiving. The rifle was about to do its job. She set the rifle back on the bench. She bent down again. She picked up the brass.
one round at a time. 48 rounds. She did not hurry. She arranged them again on the bench, brass facing left, in a neat row, exactly the way her father had taught her when she was 9. Ducker had walked back to Bay 1 by then. He was telling his Marines the story of what he had just done. Corporal Hayes was laughing. Lance Corporal Brennan had stopped recording at some point during the brass pickup, because Brennan had felt, for reasons he could not articulate, that he should not be recording this part. Ray Castellanos was on the tower phone.
Cameron! On my way. 5 minutes out.
She's about to shoot.
What kind of shoot? Ray watched Lennox slide one round, just one, into the chamber of the Remington 700. He watched her close the bolt. He watched her settle into the bench.
Prone was not available on the concrete pad. She was shooting from a seated bench position, off a small bipod and a rear bag she had pulled from her case. He watched her find her natural point of aim. He watched her cheek weld to the stock the way a person's cheek welds to a stock when their cheek and that stock have known each other for 5,000 rounds. Cameron, I think she's about to put 5 through one hole at 100 yards just to make a point.
There was a pause on the line.
Ray, tell everyone on that range to put their ears on right now.
Ray Castellanos keyed the range PA.
All shooters, all bays, eye and ear protection on the line. Eye and ear protection on the line. Cold range in 15 seconds for any shooter who is not behind a bench. Hot range resumes immediately.
Ducker on Bay 1 looked up. He looked down the line at Bay 4. He saw the woman in the red windbreaker behind the rifle. He laughed.
Oh, this I gotta see.
He turned to his Marines.
Boys, watch this. Barbie's gonna shoot.
Lance Corporal Brennan raised his phone again.
This time he hit record.
Lennox Herov, on Bay 4, exhaled half a breath, the way she had been taught when she was 23 years old by a Master Chief named Cameron Brooks, who was at that moment 3 minutes away in a green 2003 Toyota Tacoma doing 58 in a 45 on Vista Way.
She held at the bottom of the exhale.
Her finger touched the trigger. The Krieger barrel of Marcus Holloway's Remington 700 made the sound it was built to make. And one round of Federal gold medal match, traveling at 2,640 feet per second, went through the center of the orange dot at 100 yards. She worked the bolt. She did not look at the target. She chambered the second round. The second round. I want to slow this down, because what happens in the next 90 seconds is the hinge of the entire story, and if I rush it, I will have failed her, and I will have failed you. Lennox Marie Herov was seated at the bench on Bay 4. Her left elbow was on a small leather pad she had brought from home. Her right hand was wrapped around the pistol grip of the Remington 700 with the kind of grip pressure that, if you measured it with a strain gauge, would have read exactly the same on shot 1 and shot 5 and shot 50. Her cheek was welded to the comb of the stock. Her right eye was 3 3/4 inches behind the ocular lens of the Leupold Mark IV. Her breathing had dropped to 4 breaths per minute.
Her resting heart rate, which her Apple Watch had measured at 52 beats per minute when she put it on at 6:20 a.m. in the kitchen, was now at 46. She was, in the language of her old profession, in the bubble. In the bubble, the world goes quiet in a way that civilians do not understand, and that even most soldiers do not understand. The country music on Bay 1 was gone. Ducker's voice was gone. Brennan's phone, 3 bays away, was gone. Her own breathing was a sound that belonged to the rifle, not to her body. The bubble is what Lennox Herov had spent 19 years learning to enter on command, and it was what made her, in the year 2021, in a place she will never publicly confirm, one of the 4 most accurate human beings within a 6,000-mile radius of her firing position. She was in the bubble now. Ducker was not. Ducker was standing at the rear of Bay 1, 25 yards behind her and to her left, with his arms crossed over his chest and a smirk on his face that he had been wearing since he was 19 years old. He was watching her shoot. He was waiting to see her miss. He had assumed, because his entire worldview required him to assume, that the first round, the one that had just gone downrange, had hit the dirt berm somewhere south of the target. He could not see the target from where he was standing. The spotting scope at Bay 4 was on her bench, not his. He was going to walk down at the end of her string and look at the paper and laugh at it. That was the plan he had constructed in his head in the last 45 seconds. That was the plan that was about to die. She fired the second round. The Krieger barrel did its work. The brass ejected. It rolled across the concrete and stopped against the leg of the bench. She did not look at it. She worked the bolt. She chambered the third. She fired the third. She worked the bolt. She chambered the fourth. She fired the fourth. She worked the bolt. She chambered the fifth. She fired the fifth. The total elapsed time from the second round to the fifth round was 11 seconds. I want you to understand what that means. 5 rounds of bolt-action precision rifle fire from a seated bench position, with bolt manipulation in between each shot in 11 seconds, with the kind of follow-through that does not disturb the sight picture between shots. That is not a hobbyist's pace. That is not a competition shooter's pace. That is the pace of a person who has, in operational settings, had to put a follow-up round into a target that did not stop moving the way the first round suggested it should have. It is the pace of muscle memory that was paid for in places the news doesn't cover. She did not fire a sixth. She put the rifle on safe. She opened the bolt. She removed the magazine. She set the magazine on the bench. She placed the rifle, action open, on its bipod, muzzle pointed downrange, exactly the way West Haven shooting sports range rules required. She picked up the spotting scope. She put it to her eye. She looked at her target for the first time since the first shot. She did not react. Her face did not change. She set the spotting scope down. She picked up her thermos. She unscrewed the cap. She poured herself a half cup of black coffee. She drank it. On the entire range, in that moment, nobody was shooting. 6 other bays had shooters on them. 3 of those shooters were civilians who had been there since 7 a.m. 2 were a father and his teenage son on Bay 6 who had stopped firing at some point during Lennox's third shot because the father, a retired LAPD detective named Frank Ostrowski, 59 years old, had recognized the cadence of what he was hearing and had put his hand on his son's shoulder to make him stop. Bay 7 had a woman in her 30s shooting a CZ pistol. She had stopped because she had felt the air change. Bay 5 had been empty all morning. The 4 Marines on Bays 1 through 4 had stopped because Ducker had stopped, and Ducker had stopped because somewhere around shot 3 he had started to understand, in the back of his brain, in the part that does not require conscious thought, that something was very wrong with the picture he was looking at. Ray Castellanos was already walking down the path from the tower. He had a pair of Steiner binoculars around his neck. He had been the range master for 19 years. He had a pretty good idea of what he was about to see on the target at Bay 4, but he wanted to see it himself, because he had learned a long time ago that the difference between a story you tell and a story you witnessed is the difference between a man people listen to and a man people don't. He walked past Ducker on his way down. He did not look at him. Ducker said, "Hey, range master, you gonna let her?" Ray held up one finger without turning around. The universal old man signal for shut up. Ducker shut up. Even Ducker. The signal works because the men who use it have earned the right to use it, and the men they use it on can feel the difference between a finger held up by a man who can back it up and one held up by a man who can't. Ray walked down to Bay 4. Lennox had her thermos cap halfway back on. She looked up at him as he approached. She did not stand. He did not expect her to. "Senior Chief." She paused. The cap stopped moving. She looked at him for a moment with an expression that was almost, but not quite, a smile. "That obvious?" "To me, ma'am. Yes." 22 years? 22. First and 7th, Vietnam, then Pendleton. Range master 19 years here. Thank you for your service, Marine. Thank you for yours, Senior Chief. There was a beat of silence between them that the rest of the range could feel without understanding. Ray nodded toward the target. "May I?" "Please." He lifted the Steiners to his eyes. He focused at 100 yards. He found the orange dot in the center of her target. The orange dot was no longer there. In place of the orange dot, in the exact center of the 8.5 by 11-inch white paper, there was a single ragged hole, slightly oblong, about 1 1/4 inches across at its widest point. The hole was a cluster of 5 overlapping impacts, fired from a rifle she had not touched in 8 months, at 100 yards, in calm air, on a Saturday morning in October, by a woman who had been called sweetheart 4 minutes earlier by a man who had just dropped her rifle on concrete. Ray Castellanos held the binoculars to his face for 10 seconds longer than he needed to. He did not lower them. He spoke from behind them. "Senior Chief Herov, forgive my asking. The community?" "Senior Chief, Coronado. Retired March of this year." "Understood, ma'am." He lowered the binoculars. He looked her in the eye. There was a thing that passed between them, the thing that passes between two people who have served at the edge, in different services, in different decades, in different roles, and who recognize, without saying it, that the edge is a place, and you either know the place or you don't. Senior Chief, I have already called a friend of yours, or a friend who you have not met yet, but who you have a great deal in common with. He is approximately 90 seconds from this parking lot. His name is Master Chief Cameron Brooks. He retired from Special Warfare in 2011, and he lives in Vista, and I called him the moment you walked in my office. I did not know, then, what was about to happen. I called him because I recognized what you were when I saw you carry your case. I called him because in 19 years, I have learned to call him when something is about to happen on my range that is going to require a witness who can be believed in a courtroom. She nodded once. That was good range management, Marine.
Thank you, ma'am.
What's your name?
Castellanos. Raymond. Ray.
Ma'am.
Ray. The Marine on Bay 1. Has he done this before? On your range? Ray hesitated. He had a rule about gossiping about shooters. He also had a rule about lying to senior chief petty officers and red windbreakers, who had just shot a 1-inch group at 100 yards with somebody else's borrowed rifle. 3 times in the last 14 months. 2 complaints from women shooters. 1 from a Marine veteran in his 60s. I have a file.
You have a file?
Senior Chief, I have a file on every shooter who has ever done anything questionable on my range in 19 years. I am 68 years old. I do not throw paper away. For the first time that morning, Lennox Herov smiled. It was a small smile. It did not reach the scar through her right eyebrow. But it was real, and Ray saw it, and Ray would remember it for the rest of his life.
Ray, I am going to need to see that file. It will be on the desk in my office in 4 minutes, Senior Chief.
Thank you.
Ma'am, may I ask, what are you going to do?
She looked at him. She looked at the target downrange. She looked past Ray's shoulder at Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker, who was still standing at the rear of Bay 1, with his arms crossed, but whose smirk had begun to develop the very first crack along its left edge, because at some point in the last 60 seconds, Ducker had walked 5 steps forward to a position where he could see, through his own spotting scope on Bay 1, the target at the end of Bay 4. He had been looking at it for about 30 seconds now. He was no longer talking. His Marines were no longer laughing. Lance Corporal Brennan's phone was still recording. Lance Corporal Walsh, the youngest one, the one I told you to remember, had taken 2 small steps away from the rest of the group and was standing with his hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. Lennox answered Ray's question without taking her eyes off Ducker.
I am going to do nothing, Ray. I am going to pack up my rifle. I am going to drink the rest of my coffee. I am going to walk to my Jeep.
And I am going to go home and call a friend of mine in Boise.
Senior Chief. Ray, the Marine has already done it to himself. He just doesn't know it yet.
Ray Castellanos, who had been a Marine for 22 years and a range master for 19, looked at Lennox Marie Herov, 8 months retired, and he understood, in a way he would later try and fail to explain to his wife over dinner,
that he was standing next to a kind of patience he had not encountered in a very long time. The kind of patience that does not require the moment. The kind that lets the moment come. The gravel in the parking lot crunched under tires. A green 2003 Toyota Tacoma, slightly dusty, pulled into the lot and parked next to Lennox's Jeep. The driver's door opened. A man got out. Cameron Brooks was 61 years old. He was 6'1". His hair was steel gray, cut short. He wore khaki pants and a faded blue button-down with the sleeves rolled twice up his forearms. He had a tattoo on his left forearm that did not say anything, just a small black trident, and he wore it the way a man wears a scar, not for show, not hidden, just there. He had eyes the color of weather. He walked across the gravel toward the bays without hurrying, because Cameron Brooks had not hurried for anything since 1998, and he was not about to start. He came down the path. He stopped at the front of Bay 4. He looked at Lennox. He looked at the rifle, action open, on the bench. He looked at Ray. He looked, briefly, down the line at Ducker. He took the entire scene in about 3 seconds. Then he turned back to Lennox and said one word. "Senior Chief." She stood up for the first time since the shooting had started. "Master Chief." "Ray called me." "He did?" "You shooting Bay 4? "I was." "You done?" "I'm done." "What's the group?" She tilted her head slightly toward Ray. Ray cleared his throat. 1 1/4 inches. 5 rounds. 100 yards. Bench. Cameron Brooks did not whistle. He did not raise his eyebrows. He did not say anything for a moment. Then he nodded, once, slowly, and looked at Lennox and said, "Coronado?" "Coronado." "What years?" '05 to this March." "Who was your chief at workup in 12? She smiled, again, the small one, the real one. "Buchanan." Cameron Brooks closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, there was something in them that had not been there before. Something close to recognition. Something close to grief. Something close to relief. "Buchanan was my swim buddy in Bud's class 182. "I know." "You know?" "He talked about you. He said the only man he ever met who could outswim him in cold water was a master chief named Brooks, who hated swimming more than anyone alive." Cameron Brooks laughed. It was not loud. It was the laugh of a man who has not laughed in a while, and who has just been given permission. It carried down the range, all the way to Bay 1, where Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker stood with his arms crossed and watched two strangers laugh together in a language he did not speak, about a man he had never heard of, in front of a target he could now clearly see through his own spotting scope had been shot to pieces by a woman he had called Sweetheart 4.5 minutes ago. Ducker did not know it yet, but the crack in his smirk had just become a fracture. And Lance Corporal Devin Walsh, 21 years old, 6 months out of boot camp, took out his own phone and quietly, without anyone in his group noticing,
sent a text message to a number he had saved in his contacts as Dad. The text said,
"I think I need to call you tonight. Something happened." Stop the tape with me for a second. I want you to look at that range right now, in your head, the way I am looking at it in mine. Bay 4. A woman in a faded red windbreaker, standing next to her bench, with a thermos of coffee in her hand.
A range master in a tan polo, 68 years old, holding a pair of Steiner binoculars. A master chief in a blue button-down with the sleeves rolled twice, who arrived 90 seconds ago in a green Toyota Tacoma. 3 of them, standing on hot concrete, not talking particularly, just present.
And down at Bay 1, 25 yards away, a Marine Staff Sergeant, for young Marines. A Bluetooth speaker that has stopped playing country music at some point in the last 6 minutes, because somebody, probably Walsh, reached over and shut it off. I want you to feel the temperature of that range right now. Because I have been on ranges that felt like this maybe 6 times in my whole life. And every single time I felt it, somebody's career was about to end, or somebody was about to be hospitalized, or somebody was about to learn, at the age of 30, 35, 40, that the version of themselves they had been carrying around in their head for the last 20 years was a lie they had been telling themselves about who they were. That is what Ducker is about to find out. He just doesn't know it yet. He is still, in his head, the staff sergeant who walked onto that range at 7:01 a.m. He is still, in his head, the distinguished rifleman with the tattoo on his forearm and the 4 young Marines who laugh at his jokes. He has not yet understood that at 7:47 a.m. and 41 seconds, when he let go of Lennox Herov's rifle and dropped it on concrete, he stepped through a door that does not have a handle on the other side. Now, I want to tell you 4 things before we go back in. The first thing. I know some of you are watching this and you are saying, "Gunny, come on. 5 shots in one hole at 100 yards. You're embellishing. Nobody shoots that good with a rifle they haven't touched in 8 months. You're telling us a war story." I want you to look up 2 names when this is over. The first name is Carlos Hathcock, United States Marine Corps, Vietnam. He did things with a rifle that, if I told you what they were without showing you the documentation, you would not believe me. The second name is Chris Kyle, United States Navy SEAL, Iraq. Same thing. I am not comparing Lennox Herov to those men in terms of body count, because that is a comparison that disrespects all 3 of them. I am telling you that the upper end of what a precision rifle and a trained human being can do, in good conditions, with the right ammunition, is further out on the curve than most of you have any frame of reference for. 1 inch at 100 yards from a bench, with a quality rifle and match ammunition, by a person trained the way Lennox was trained, that is not a miracle. That is a Tuesday morning. The miracle is that we have people in this country who can do it on demand, in the dark, in the rain, while being shot at. That is the miracle. The Saturday morning version is just the resting heart rate of the miracle. The second thing. Lance Corporal Devin Walsh, the kid who texted his dad. I want you to understand who Walsh is, because Walsh is, in many ways, the most important person on that range besides Lennox herself. Walsh's dad is a man named Robert Walsh. Bob Walsh. Bob Walsh is 54 years old. He retired from the United States Marine Corps in 2019 as a sergeant major. Sergeant major, the highest enlisted rank in the Marine Corps. He spent 28 years in the Corps. He did 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. He is, today, a civilian employee at Marine Corps Base Quantico, in a role I am not going to describe, because Bob Walsh and I have had coffee together, and the coffee is private. But I will tell you this much. Bob Walsh knows everybody. Bob Walsh knows the Commandant's Chief of Staff personally. Bob Walsh knows the commanding officer of Weapons Training Battalion at Camp Pendleton, the unit where Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is currently assigned. Bob Walsh has known him since they were lieutenants together at the basic school in 1991. When Devin Walsh, his youngest son, 6 months out of boot camp, sends his dad a text that says, "I think I need to call you tonight. Something happened." What Devin does not know, and what Ducker certainly does not know, is that Bob Walsh is going to read the text in approximately 2 hours and 17 minutes, while standing in line at a Home Depot in Stafford, Virginia, buying a new garden hose. He is going to read it. He is going to feel his stomach drop the way every parent's stomach drops when their kid sends them that kind of text. He is going to leave the Home Depot without buying the hose. He is going to drive home. He is going to sit on his back porch with a glass of bourbon and the phone in his hand. And at 6 p.m. Eastern, which is 3 p.m. Pacific, he is going to call his son. And his son is going to tell him a story. That story, told by a 21-year-old Lance Corporal to a 54-year-old retired Sergeant Major who knows everybody in the Marine Corps. That story is going to be a different weapon entirely than Lennox Herov's rifle. It is going to do different damage. It is going to do it slower. It is going to do it for longer. And when it is finished, in about 11 weeks, Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is not going to be a staff sergeant anymore. But that is for later. I am getting ahead of myself. The third thing. I want to talk for a second about the friend in Boise. Lennox told Ray 2 minutes ago, "I am going to go home and call a friend of mine in Boise." I told you, in Chapter 3, about Marcus Holloway. Petty Officer First Class, retired. Medical discharge, 2019. Right leg amputated below the knee. Wife Teresa, 2 boys, gunsmith out of his garage. He gave Lennox the rifle. He calls her every other Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific. What I did not tell you about Marcus, because the moment was not right, is what Marcus did after he was medically discharged. Marcus Holloway, in 2020, started a YouTube channel. He started it small. He started it because he was bored, and because he liked talking about rifles, and because Teresa told him he needed a hobby that was not staring at the wall and reorganizing the gun safe. He filmed his videos in his garage. He showed how to bed a stock. He showed how to crown a barrel. He showed how to read brass for pressure signs. He was good at it. He was patient. He was a teacher in his bones, the way some men are. By the end of 2022, Marcus Holloway's YouTube channel had 340,000 subscribers. By the time Lennox Herov walks onto that range at 7:43 a.m. on this Saturday in October, Marcus Holloway has 620,000 subscribers. He has a podcast that drops every Tuesday. He has done interviews with 3 current and former members of the United States military precision rifle teams. He has a sponsorship with a major ammunition company. He has a following that, and I want you to mark this, has a very particular character. It is mostly men. It is mostly current and former military. It is mostly people who care very deeply about 2 things: precision rifle shooting and the question of whether the people who hold rifles in this country deserve the rifles they are holding. When Lennox Herov calls Marcus Holloway tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific, and she will call him, because Marcus calls her every other Sunday, and tomorrow is Sunday, but she is going to call him a day early. She is going to ask him a question. The question is going to be about a video. The video is the one Lance Corporal Brennan is currently recording on his phone on Bay 1. That video, in 3 days, is going to be on Marcus Holloway's channel. It is going to be the most watched video Marcus Holloway has ever posted. And it is going to do something to Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker's life that not even Sergeant Major Bob Walsh, with all his contacts at Quantico, is going to be able to do. Because what Bob Walsh can do is end Ducker's career through official channels, which is private and slow and quiet. What Marcus Holloway can do, with a 4-minute video edited the way Marcus knows how to edit a video, is something public, something fast, something loud, something that lives in the corner of the internet that cares about this kind of thing forever. Now I want to be careful here, because this is not a revenge story. I have told you that already. I am telling you again because we are about to walk into the part of the story where revenge would be easy and where it would be wrong. Lennox is not going to ask Marcus to destroy Ducker. She is going to ask Marcus to tell the truth. And the truth, when it is told carefully, by the right person, at the right time, with the right footage, is something different from revenge. It is harder. It is colder. It is more honest. And in the end, it does more damage, because revenge wears off, and the truth doesn't. The 4th thing. I want to tell you what Lennox is feeling right now, because I have been deliberately not telling you, and I think you deserve to know. She is not angry. She was angry for about half a second, in second 1 of the 4 seconds before she bent down to pick up her rifle. After that, she was not angry anymore. She was tired. She is tired now. She is tired in a specific way that veterans of long careers in violent professions know. The tiredness of having seen this exact movie before, in 19 different countries, in 19 different versions, with the same script. She is tired because she retired 8 months ago specifically, so that she would not have to be the one to do this anymore. She is tired because the lemon tree in her front yard has 40 lemons on it, and she had a plan for those lemons today, and the plan did not include teaching another Staff Sergeant Ducker that the world is bigger than he is. But she is going to do it anyway. Because here is the thing about Lennox Herov, and I want you to understand this before we go back in. The Navy did not make her this way. The Navy found her this way and gave her tools. Her father, the man who taught her to shoot when she was 9, the man who is 12 years dead from pancreatic cancer in a hospital in Bend, Oregon. Her father taught her one thing, more than any other, that she has carried with her every day for 32 years. He taught her that the world is full of men who will be cruel to women on the assumption that there will be no consequence. And he taught her that if she ever found herself with the means to be the consequence, she had a duty, not an option, a duty to be it. Quietly, without enjoying it, without bragging about it, but all the way. Her father's name was Edward Herov. He grew up in eastern Oregon. He worked for the Forest Service for 31 years. He was a small man, 5'8". He shot trap on Saturdays. He read history books in the evening. He died on a Tuesday in May at 63 years old, holding his wife's hand, in a hospital room with the blinds open because he wanted to see the sky. Lennox carries a small photograph of him in her dope book. He is standing in the snow, in 1989, in a hunting coat that is too big for him, holding a rifle that he later gave to her, smiling at the camera. He is 41 years old in the photograph, the same age Lennox is right now. She thinks about that photograph approximately every other day. She is thinking about it right now. All right, I have made you wait long enough. Let's go back to the range. The truth is about to start. Back to the range. 7:53 a.m. 6 minutes have passed since the fifth shot. The sun has moved maybe 3 degrees in the sky. The temperature has come up 2 degrees. The orange surveyor's tape on the target frame at 100 yards is still moving the same lazy 2 miles an hour, left to right, switching occasionally. Lennox Marie Herov has just begun to break down her rifle. She does it the way she does everything, slowly, in order, without wasted motion. She removes the bolt. She places it in a small leather sleeve. She places the sleeve in the foam cutout in the corner of her case. She removes the magazine. She thumbs the remaining 43 rounds out, one at a time, into a small plastic tray. She places the tray in the case. She wipes down the action with a microfiber cloth. She wipes down the barrel. She wipes down the stock, and she pauses for half a second when she gets to the butt of the stock, where there is now a small, fresh scuff of concrete dust along the edge. She does not look up. She wipes the scuff away. Cameron Brooks is standing about 4 feet behind her left shoulder, with his arms folded, looking down the range at Bay 1. Ray Castellanos is back up at the tower, on the phone, doing 2 things at once: pulling Ducker's file from the cabinet behind his desk, and dialing a number for the San Diego County Sheriff's substation in Vista that he has memorized over the last 19 years. Ray is not calling 911. Ray is calling the substation directly on the non-emergency line, because Ray has learned that 911 calls bring deputies who do not know him, and the non-emergency line brings a specific sergeant named Diane Ramirez, who has been working that substation for 11 years and who knows Ray's voice. Ray wants Sergeant Ramirez. Sergeant Ramirez is going to want to know that the range master at West Haven Shooting Sports is reporting a probable assault, a probable destruction of personal property in excess of $10,000 in value, and a probable failure to safely handle a firearm by an active-duty Marine,
and that the range master has the entire incident on closed-circuit video from 4 separate camera angles. Because here is something I did not tell you, and Ducker did not know. West Haven Shooting Sports has cameras. 4 of them, mounted high. 2 on the tower, 2 on the back wall of the base shelter. They cover every inch of the firing line and every inch of the path from the parking lot to the base. They record in 4K. They store 30 days of footage on a server in Ray's office. Ray installed them in 2018 after a customer accused another customer of stealing a scope, and the case went to small claims court, and Ray got tired of being deposed about what he had and had not seen. The cameras have been on all morning. The cameras saw Staff Sergeant Ducker walk to Bay 4. The cameras saw him pick up Lennox's rifle. The cameras saw him drop it. The cameras saw him kick the ammunition box. The cameras saw him spit on the concrete. The cameras have audio, too. Not great audio, ambient, but good enough to catch a man calling a woman, sweetheart, and Barbie, in a tone of voice that a jury can interpret without much help. Ducker does not know about the cameras. He has never thought to look for the cameras. Men like Ducker, when they walk onto a range, see the targets and the benches and the people they intend to dominate. They do not, as a rule, look up. Ray is looking up at the cameras right now from his office chair as he dials Sergeant Ramirez. He is smiling a little. He cannot help it. Down on Bay 1, Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is starting to move. I want you to understand his state of mind. Ducker is a man whose entire identity is built on the assumption that he is the most competent shooter in any room he walks into. He has just watched, through his own spotting scope, with his own eyes, a woman he called sweetheart put 5 rounds into a hole the size of a quarter at 100 yards, with a rifle he just dropped on concrete, for minutes after he insulted her in front of his Marines. In a healthy man, this would produce reflection. It would produce, at minimum, a quiet recalibration, a walk over to Bay 4 with a hat in his hand, an apology, a redirection of the morning. Ducker is not a healthy man. In Ducker, what this produces is a different set of mechanisms entirely. It produces the need to reassert. It produces the need to find a frame in which what just happened did not happen, or did not mean what it appeared to mean. It produces the need to walk down to Bay 4, not to apologize, but to make the moment about something else. To find a technicality, a rule, a reason, any reason, any frame that puts him back at the center of the story as the man in charge. He starts to walk. His 4 Marines watch him go. Hayes follows 2 steps behind. Reyes follows 3 steps behind Hayes. Brennan stays where he is, holding his phone at his hip, but the phone is still recording. Lance Corporal Devin Walsh does not move. Walsh has both hands in his pockets and is looking at the concrete between his boots and Walsh's, without anyone in his group having noticed, 12 feet farther away from the group than he was when this started. Walsh is already gone, in a way that will not become visible for a few more minutes. Ducker walks down the line. He gets to Bay 4. He stops at the front of the bay, on Lennox's right side, exactly where he had stood 7 minutes earlier. This time he does not look at her rifle. The rifle is in the case now, mostly broken down.
He looks at her. Lennox is closing the foam over the bolt sleeve. She does not look up. Cameron Brooks, 4 feet behind her left shoulder, does not move.
Ducker speaks. His voice is different from the voice he used the first time. The smirk in it is gone. It has been replaced by something tighter, something that is working harder, something that is trying to manufacture authority where the previous version had simply assumed it.
Ma'am, I need to see your range membership and your ID. Lennox closes the case. She latches the right latch. She latches the left latch. She stands up. She is 5'7". He is 6'1". The difference does not matter, and both of them know it does not matter, and the not matching is part of what is making Ducker's jaw tighten. You're not range staff.
I'm a United States Marine, on a Marine Corps range. There's a way we do things here.
This is not a Marine Corps range. This is West Haven Shooting Sports. It is a private commercial facility owned by a man named Donald Westhaven who lives in La Jolla. The range master is in the tower.
His name is Ray Castellanos. If he wants to see my ID, he can ask me himself.
Ma'am, Staff Sergeant.
It was the first time she had used his rank. She used it the way a person uses a scalpel. He felt it. He blinked.
You know my rank? I read the patch on your hat. I have been reading rank insignia for 19 years and 4 months. I read yours in the parking lot at 7:02 a.m. Then you know. I know that you are an E6 in the United States Marine Corps. I know that you are currently assigned to Weapons Training Battalion at Camp Pendleton.
I know, because I have been listening to the way you address your junior Marines for the last 53 minutes, that you have been in your current billet for less than 18 months. I know that you are not their platoon sergeant, because their platoon sergeant would not let you take them shooting on a Saturday in those PT shorts. I know you are a small unit leader who has scrounged a weekend training of it together to look like a mentor in front of 4 young men who do not yet know enough to evaluate you.
And I know. And here she paused for exactly 1 second and looked him in the eye for the first time in the entire conversation. I know that you washed out a scout sniper basic course at some point in your career, because no Marine who graduated from that course handles a precision rifle the way you handled mine. The silence on Bay 4 after that sentence was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of something else.
Ducker's face did 3 things in quick succession. It went pale. It went red. It went still. The stillness was the dangerous part. The stillness is the look a certain kind of man gets in the half second before he does something he cannot take back. Cameron Brooks, 4 feet behind Lennox's left shoulder, shifted his weight. Just shifted. From the balls of his feet onto his heels, and then back onto the balls again. It was a movement so small that none of the Marines saw it. It was a movement that, to anyone who had ever stood in a stack outside a door at 3 in the morning in a country that doesn't matter for the purpose of this story, said one thing very clearly: I am here. I am ready. Do not. Ducker did not see Cameron's weight shift, but something in his hindbrain felt it. Something in his hindbrain registered, for the first time, that the man in the blue button-down 4 feet behind the woman he was trying to dominate was not a bystander.
was not a husband, was not a boyfriend, was not someone he was going to physically intimidate.
Ducker took a half step back.
He recovered. He tried a different angle.
Ma'am, I want to apologize if I... No, you don't. Excuse me? You don't want to apologize, Staff Sergeant. You want to retroactively reframe the last 7 minutes so that you can leave this range without the consequences of what you did. Those are two different things.
I am not going to help you with the second one.
Ma'am, with respect. Do not say with respect. You do not have any. You expended it at 7:47 a.m. when you put your hand on my rifle. You cannot get it back by using the words in a sentence. His Marines, Hayes and Reyes, had drifted to a stop about 10 feet behind him. They were no longer following. They were no longer smiling. Hayes had the look on his face of a man who is starting to do math he does not want to do. Reyes was looking at the ground. Lennox was not finished. She had spoken in a low voice the entire time. She had not raised it once. She did not raise it now.
She just continued, in the same flat, measured, almost gentle tone, the tone of a person reading the obituary of a man she had once known.
Staff Sergeant Ducker, I am going to tell you what is going to happen next. Not to threaten you, to inform you. Because in my experience, men in your situation make better decisions when they understand the terrain. So I am going to draw you the terrain. Are you listening to me? He did not answer. Are you listening to me, Staff Sergeant? Yes. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to finish loading my Jeep. I am going to drive home. I am not going to call your command. I am not going to call the police.
I am not going to file a complaint with this range, although Mr. Castellanos is, on his own initiative, going to file one with the San Diego County Sheriff's Office on the basis of the closed-circuit video evidence from the 4 cameras you did not notice, which I am told he is reviewing right now. That is the floor of what is going to happen to you. I want you to understand the floor first. In the next 48 hours, the video that Lance Corporal Brennan, behind you, has been recording on his phone is going to leave Lance Corporal Brennan's phone. I do not know how. I do not need to know how. Lance Corporal Brennan is 23 years old and is going to make a decision about that video tonight or tomorrow that he believes is his own decision and that, in fact, has been inevitable since the moment he hit record. The video is going to end up in the hands of a friend of mine in Boise, Idaho, who has a YouTube channel with 620,000 subscribers, most of them military, most of them precision rifle shooters, all of them deeply, deeply interested in the question of how Marines should and should not treat civilians and shooters on a public range.
That is the ceiling of what is going to happen to you publicly.
In the next 2 weeks, the Sergeant Major's network in your service is going to do its work. I am not going to make a single phone call. I do not have to.
There is a young Marine in your group right now whose father knows your battalion commander personally, and that young Marine has already, in the last 6 minutes, sent his father a text message that is going to result in a phone call this evening. That phone call is going to start a process at Quantico and Pendleton that, in 11 weeks, is going to terminate in your separation from the Marine Corps under conditions that will not include a pension.
That is the ceiling of what is going to happen to you institutionally. I want you to understand that none of this is something I am doing to you. All of it is something you did. I am simply describing the topography of the country you walked into at 7:47 a.m. when you put your hand on my rifle. You have one option remaining that improves your situation. Just one. Are you listening? Ducker was, by this point, not looking at her. He was looking at the concrete, exactly where Lance Corporal Walsh, 25 yards away, was looking at his own concrete. Two men on the same range, in the same morning, in the same posture, for opposite reasons. Yes! Your one option, Staff Sergeant, is to walk back to Bay 1, to gather your Marines, to leave this range immediately in your vehicles, to go home, to call your wife. And I know you have a wife, because you have a wedding ring on your left hand and a tan line on your right ring finger that suggests you used to wear a second ring there and stopped. And that is a conversation for you and her, and not for me, and to tell her today, before anyone else tells her what happened on this range this morning. To tell her completely, without softening it, without reframing it. To tell her exactly what you did, and exactly what was said, and exactly what was shot. To do this before 5 p.m. today, because at some point after 5 p.m. today, your situation is going to become public in ways you will not control, and the only piece of this you can still control, right now, is whether the person you sleep next to tonight hears the story from you first or from the internet second. That is your one remaining option. I would advise you to take it. I am telling you this not because I owe you anything, but because somewhere in your house this morning there is a woman who married you in good faith, and she is the only person in this story whose suffering I have any interest in mitigating. Do you understand me, Staff Sergeant? He did not answer. Do you understand me, Staff Sergeant? Yes, ma'am. Good. Go. He did not move for a moment. And then he turned, and he walked, and he did not look at her once on the way, and he did not look at Cameron Brooks, and he did not look at Ray Castellanos, who had come halfway down the path from the tower with a manila folder in his left hand, and a phone in his right, and a face that had no expression on it at all. Hayes and Reyes followed Ducker. Brennan, on Bay 1, lowered his phone and stopped the recording at the 4-minute and 17-second mark, and looked at the phone in his hand for a long moment as if he was not entirely sure how it had gotten there. Lance Corporal Devin Walsh did not follow them. Walsh stood where he was, hands still in his pockets, and watched his staff sergeant and two of his peers walk to the parking lot. Then he turned, slowly, and walked the 25 yards down the line of bays, past Brennan, past the empty bays, until he was standing at the front of Bay 4. He stopped 6 feet from Lennox. He did not speak for a moment. He looked at her. He looked at Cameron. He looked at the rifle case on the bench. Then he took his right hand out of his pocket, and he held it out, and he said, "Lance Corporal Devin Walsh, ma'am. United States Marine Corps. I'd like to apologize on behalf of my service." Lennox Herov looked at the hand. She looked at his face. He was 21 years old. He had a small cut on his jaw from shaving badly in a barracks bathroom at 5 a.m. He was trying very hard not to cry, and was succeeding, but barely. She took his hand.
She shook it once. She did not let go right away.
Lance Corporal Walsh, your service does not owe me an apology. One man on it does, and he is not going to give one. You owe me nothing.
But if you would like to do something useful in the next 60 seconds, I would ask you to do one thing.
Yes, ma'am. Tell your father the whole story tonight. Do not soften it for him. He is going to be able to take it. Do you understand me?
Devin Walsh's eyes widened by maybe a quarter of an inch. He did not ask her how she knew about his father. He did not ask her anything.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Go home, Lance Corporal. He let go of her hand. He took 2 steps backward, the way Marines are taught to disengage from a senior, and he turned, and he walked back up the line, past Brennan, into the parking lot, where Staff Sergeant Ducker's truck was already running and the 3 other Marines were already inside it. Walsh did not get in the truck. He walked to his own car, a 2014 Honda Civic slightly dented, with a Marine Corps decal on the back window, and he got in, and he sat there with his hands on the wheel for a long moment, and then he put the car in reverse, and he drove out of the parking lot, alone. Ducker's truck pulled out 30 seconds later. The dust settled. At 7:59 a.m. on Saturday, October the 12th, 2024, the firing line at West Haven Shooting Sports was quiet in a way it had not been all morning. Frank Ostrowski, the retired LAPD detective on Base 6, looked at his son and said one quiet sentence that the boy would remember for the rest of his life.
Mark this morning, kiddo. You just saw something.
The thing about a moment like that is that it does not end when the truck pulls out of the parking lot. It does not end when the dust settles. It does not end at all, in the way television and movies have trained you to expect endings. What happens, instead, is that the people who were in the moment stand around in the place where the moment was, holding their hands at their sides, not entirely sure what to do with their bodies. Because the adrenaline does not get the memo. The adrenaline thinks the moment is still going on for another 6 or 7 minutes after the moment is technically over, and during those 6 or 7 minutes, the human beings in the room have to figure out what to do with all that unspent biology. Lennox figured it out by doing what she always did. She finished loading her Jeep. She picked up the rifle case in her right hand and the ammunition tray in her left, and she walked, slowly, the 40 feet from Bay 4 to the parking lot. Cameron walked beside her. He did not offer to carry anything. He had known her for 14 minutes, and he already understood that offering to carry her case would have insulted her in a way that no amount of apologizing could have repaired. He just walked. Ray Castellanos met them at the Jeep. He had the manila folder in his hand. He held it out. "Senior Chief, the file." She took it. She did not open it. She put it on the passenger seat. She would open it that evening at her kitchen table with a glass of water and a yellow legal pad, and she would read every page of it twice. The file would contain, among other things, the names and contact information for the 2 female shooters and the elderly Marine veteran Ducker had abused on this range over the previous 14 months. Lennox would not contact those people. She would not need to. The file would simply confirm in writing what she had already known the moment Ducker opened his mouth at 7:01 a.m., which was that this was not the first time, and that men like Ducker are not made on Saturday mornings. They are revealed on them.
Ray, thank you. Senior Chief, may I ask you something?
You may.
In 19 years on this range, I have never seen a shooter handle a situation like that the way you just did. I have seen shooters get loud. I have seen shooters get violent. I have seen shooters call lawyers from the parking lot.
I have never seen someone do what you just did. The terrain speech. The way you laid it out to him.
Was that a question, Ray?
It was, ma'am.
Sorry. The question is, where did you learn to do that?
Lennox loaded the rifle case into the back of the Jeep. She closed the tailgate. She turned to face him, and she leaned her hip against the bumper, and she looked at him for a moment with an expression that was both tired and, for the first time that morning, something close to soft.
Ray, in my old job, I sometimes had to convince people who did not speak my language, in places where I did not have authority, to make decisions that were not in their immediate emotional interest. To stand down, to put a weapon on the ground, to walk away from a doorway, to not do the thing they were about to do. The only way to do that, when you cannot use force, and you cannot use rank, and you cannot use a shared language, is to describe their situation to them so clearly and so honestly that they realize, on their own, that the version of events in their head is wrong. You do not argue with them. You do not threaten them. You just hold up a mirror, and the mirror is more accurate than the one they have been using, and you let them look at it for a while. Most people, when shown an accurate mirror, will choose to stop doing the thing they were doing. Not all. Most. Staff Sergeant Ducker was, in the end, a most. That is all I did to him just now. I held up a mirror. Ray nodded slowly. He looked down at his shoes. He looked back up. Ma'am, I'm 68 years old. I have known a lot of Marines. I have known some serious men and some serious women. I want to say one thing, and then I will leave you alone. Go ahead, Ray. It has been an honor, Senior Chief. I mean that. Whatever it is you did in those 19 years, on behalf of a country that mostly never knew you were doing it, I am grateful. I would have shaken your hand if you had walked in here this morning and gone home without firing a shot. I am extra grateful that the universe gave me a chance to watch you work.
Lennox looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something she had not done in front of a stranger in maybe 4 years. She reached out, and she put her right hand on Ray Castellanos' left shoulder, and she squeezed it, once, gently, the way her father used to squeeze her shoulder when she was a girl, and she had done something he was proud of. Ray, take care of your range. There are going to be more of them. There are always more of them. Yes, ma'am. Goodbye, Marine. Goodbye, Senior Chief. She turned to Cameron. Master Chief, you want a cup of coffee? Cameron Brooks, who had been quiet for the entire conversation with Ray, did something with his face that was almost a smile. Senior Chief, I would love one. There is a diner about 2 miles from here that has been making the same bad coffee since 1974. I have been going there on Saturday mornings for 13 years.
If you follow me, I will buy.
You will not buy. I will buy. We will fight about it at the counter. That is acceptable.
She got in her Jeep. He got in his Tacoma. They pulled out of the parking lot in convoy, and they drove the 2 miles to a place called Lou's Diner on Vista Way, and they sat in a booth in the back, and they ordered coffee and dry wheat toast and a single egg over medium each, and they talked, quietly, for an hour and a half, about people they had both known, and about a country they had both served, and about what comes next when the thing you spent 2 decades doing is no longer the thing you do. I am not going to tell you what they talked about in detail. That conversation is theirs. It is not mine. It is not yours. The only thing I will tell you, because it is going to matter at the end of this story, is that at some point during that hour and a half, Cameron Brooks took out his wallet and slid a small white business card across the table to Lennox, and she looked at it, and she put it in the pocket of her red windbreaker, and she nodded at him once, and that was all that needed to be said. The card had a phone number on it, and nothing else.
Lennox put it in her pocket. She did not ask what it was for. Cameron did not explain.
Both of them understood that the explanation was the same as the offer, and the offer was the same thing every old operator offers every other old operator at the end of a shared morning. If you ever need it, the line is open. It was not friendship, exactly. Friendship would come later, or it wouldn't. It was the older thing that friendship sometimes grows out of. The thing you only get to have with people who have stood in the same kinds of rooms you have stood in. They finished their coffee.
Cameron paid for both of them anyway. Lennox let him.
She had decided, somewhere between the second cup and the third, that letting him buy breakfast was the small gift she could give him in exchange for the larger gift he had given her by simply standing 4 feet behind her left shoulder for 14 minutes and not saying a word. They walked out to the parking lot together. The sun was higher now. It was almost 10 in the morning. The day had become, in the way Southern California days become, indifferent. The same hot, blue, blameless sky that does not care what happened under it 3 hours earlier.
She shook his hand at the door of her Jeep.
Master Chief. Senior Chief.
I'll call. I know you will.
She got in the Jeep. She started it. She backed out of the spot. He watched her go. He did not wave. Men like Cameron Brooks do not wave. He just stood in the parking lot of Lou's Diner with his hands in his pockets until her Jeep was out of sight, and then he got in his Tacoma, and he drove home to a woman named Linda Brooks, who had been his wife for 34 years, and when she asked him how his morning had been, he said,
"Met someone today. I'll tell you about it tonight."
And Linda Brooks, who had been the wife of a master chief in special warfare for the operational portion of his career, and had learned in 1994 to read her husband's silences the way other women read newspapers, looked at him over the rim of her coffee mug and said,
"Was she a friend of David's?"
Because Linda Brooks remembered the name of every Master Chief Cameron had ever served with, and she had remembered, the moment her husband walked through the door, The look he wore on the rare days he had encountered a member of a very small fraternity from a very small mountain in Coronado. She knew the look. The look meant a swim buddy of a swim buddy. The look meant family I have not met yet.
Yeah, Cameron said. Buchanan's. She was Buchanan's.
And Linda Brooks nodded, and she did not ask anything else for the rest of the afternoon, because she knew her husband would tell her in his own time.
Lennox drove home. 22 minutes from the diner to her house in Oceanside. She did not turn on the radio. She did not call anyone. She drove the way she always drove, both hands on the wheel, eyes scanning, mirrors checked every 8 seconds, the small habits of a profession she had not really left behind, would never really leave behind, was not entirely sure she wanted to leave behind. She pulled into her driveway at 10:27 a.m. She killed the engine. She sat in the Jeep for a moment with her hands on the wheel. She looked at the lemon tree. The lemons were still there. 40 of them. 3 were on the ground now. They had dropped overnight, and she would pick those up first, because lemons that touched the dirt for more than a day went bad faster than the ones still on the tree. She got out. She unloaded the rifle case into the house. She put the case in the gun safe in the spare bedroom, the safe that had been her father's, that she had inherited in 2013, that had a small steel plate on the door engraved with his initials, E.H. She locked the safe. She set the rifle aside in her mind. She would clean it that evening, properly, on the kitchen table, with the radio on. The rifle had earned a proper cleaning. She walked back outside. She picked up the 3 lemons from the ground. She walked into the kitchen. She washed her hands. She set the lemons on the counter. She poured a glass of water. She drank it. She looked at the clock on the microwave. 10:36 a.m. Marcus would be awake. Marcus was always awake by 6 on a Saturday. He would be in his garage by 7:30. He would have a cup of coffee at his elbow, and a rifle on his bench, and the small Bluetooth speaker on the workbench playing a podcast about something. History, usually the Civil War, sometimes Korea, sometimes the early Pacific campaign, and he would answer his phone on the second ring. She picked up her phone. She found his name. She pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Len. Marcus. You're a day early. I am. There was a small pause on the line. Marcus Holloway had known Lennox Herov for 11 years. He had heard her voice on the phone after good days, and bad days, and days that did not have names. He could tell, from the single word I am, that this was a day with a name. Talk to me, sister. Marcus. Something happened on a range this morning. I need you to listen to the whole thing before you say anything. Can you do that? I can. Are you sitting down? I am now. She told him. She told him all of it. The arrival at 7:43. The Bluetooth speaker. The country music. The walk to Bay 4. The hand on the rifle. The drop on the concrete. The spit. The ammunition box. The 4 seconds. The 5 shots. The conversation with Ray. The arrival of Cameron Brooks. The terrain speech to Ducker. the handshake with Lance Corporal Walsh, the Jeep ride to Lewes, the card in her pocket, all of it. She told it in order, without embellishment, in the same flat, measured tone she had used on Ducker. She had told stories like this before, in after-action reports, in debriefings, in conference rooms in Virginia and Florida, and one room in Stuttgart, Germany. She knew how to tell a story without putting herself in the middle of it. Marcus did not interrupt. He did not say, "Oh my God," or "Jesus Christ," or any of the things a different kind of friend would have said. He listened. She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, and she could hear, in the background, the small hiss of an air compressor cycling on and off in his garage, and at one point she heard him put his coffee mug down on his bench, very deliberately, the way a man puts a mug down when he does not trust his hand to hold it for another second. When she was finished, there was a silence on the line that lasted maybe 12 seconds. Then Marcus said, "Len, the rifle is fine, Marcus. I checked it. It's fine. Are you fine?" "I'm fine." "Len." "Marcus." "I'm fine. Tired. Not hurt." "Not shaken. Tired." "Okay." There was another silence. Then he said, "You want me to do something?" It was not a question. He had known her for 11 years. She did not call him on a Saturday morning, a day early, with a story like that, to vent. She did not vent. Lennox Herov, in 11 years of friendship, had never once vented to him. If she was on the phone, she had a purpose. Marcus respected the purpose enough to name it before she had to. "Marcus, there is going to be a video. One of the Marines was recording. A Lance Corporal named Brennan. I do not know him personally, but I clocked him during the incident. He is 23. He is going to look at that video tonight. He is going to feel something complicated about it, and he is going to do one of two things. He is going to delete it, or he is going to post it. I think he is going to post it. The phone in his hand was newer than the truck Ducker drove him in. He cares about that phone. He uses it. He has accounts on it. He is going to post it." "Where?" "I don't know. Instagram, TikTok, Reddit." Probably Reddit first, in one of the military subs, because he is going to want validation before he wants reach. He will post it anonymously. He will not include his name. He will include enough context that the people in those subs will understand what they are seeing. "And you want me to find it?" "I want you to find it. I want you to download it before it gets taken down. I want you to verify it is real, and you will be able to, because the cameras at West Haven Shooting Sports are going to have the same incident from 4 other angles, and Ray Castellanos is going to release those to the sheriff's office, and eventually they will become public, and I want you to put it on your channel." "Len." "Marcus, listen to me. I want you to put it on your channel with one rule, and I am only going to say the rule once." "Tell me the rule." "The video is not about me. You will not say my name. You will not show my face. Brennan's footage will not have my face clearly. He was behind me the whole time.
But if any angle from raised cameras catches my face, you will blur it.
You will not mention my service. You will not mention Coronado. You will not mention my career. You will not make this a story about who I was. You will make this a story about who he is. About what happens on civilian ranges in this country when men like him treat the range like a place to perform their authority. About the rule, the universal rule, the only rule, that you do not touch another shooter's rifle. You will tell that story, Marcus. You will tell it with your voice, in your way, on your channel. You will not tell it as a story about a sniper. You will tell it as a story about a shooter, a woman, a civilian, on a range, with a rifle, and what was done to her, and why every person watching your video should care, regardless of who she was before this morning. Do you understand me? There was another long silence.
Len. Marcus. You are asking me to leave out the part of the story that would make the video go to 20 million views instead of 2 million. I am. You are asking me to protect your privacy at the cost of the reach of the message. I am. Because if the message goes out as man assaults Navy SEAL on shooting range, the message becomes about you. And you do not want it to be about you. You want it to be about every woman on every range in this country who does not have your resume and cannot protect herself the way you did. Marcus. Yes. Len.
He stopped. She heard him breathe. She heard the air compressor cycle on. She heard him breathe again.
Len, I have known you 11 years. I am going to ask you one question, and then I am going to do exactly what you said, exactly the way you said it. The question is, are you sure?
Because the version where I tell the whole story, where the world knows who you were, that version protects you too. That version makes the men like Ducker who watch the video at home tonight feel something they need to feel. That version teaches them, in a way the smaller version cannot, that the woman they are about to insult on a range might be, something they do not have the imagination to fear. That version saves women. Are you sure you want the smaller version? Lennox was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Marcus thought, for a second, the line had dropped. It hadn't. She was looking out her kitchen window at the lemon tree, and she was thinking about her father, and she was thinking about a girl in Norfolk in 2003 who had taken the oath at 18, and she was thinking about every classified line in her DD-214 and every name she could not say out loud in a diner. She said, Marcus, I spent 19 years being the bigger version. I have 8 months of being a person who is not that. I am not ready to give them up yet. The smaller version is the one I can live with. The smaller version is the one my father would have wanted. He did not raise me to be a story. He raised me to be a person who sometimes did things. I would like to go back to being a person. Marcus did not argue with her. Okay, sister. Okay. I'll find the video. I'll verify it. I'll edit it the way you asked. It'll be up Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain, which is the slot my regulars expect. I'll write the script tonight. I'll show it to Teresa before I record. She'll catch anything I miss. Thank you, Marcus. Len, one more thing. Yes. The rifle. I want to know about the rifle. Not now. Eventually.
I want to know how it shot. I want to know if the bedding held. I want to know if the trigger broke clean. I want to know if the brass was ejecting consistent. I built that rifle in 2019, and I have not put a round through it since I sent it to you. I want to know.
She smiled. He could not see it, but he could hear it in the next breath she took. Marcus, it shot perfect. The bedding held. The trigger broke at 2 pounds 12 ounces, exactly where you said it. The brass ejected at 4 o'clock, every round, consistent. The bolt was glass. The scope held 0 through 8 months in a safe and a 100-yard cold bore that hit the orange dot dead center. The rifle is exactly the rifle you built. I want you to know that. I want you to know that the work you did in your garage in 2019, on a leg you were still learning how to live without, was the best work I have ever shot. I should have told you that a long time ago, and I am sorry I waited until today to say it. There was a silence on the line that was different from the other silences. It was the silence of a man in Boise, Idaho, sitting on a stool in his garage, holding a phone to his ear, and trying not to let his voice break. Len. Marcus. Thanks for calling, sister. Thanks for picking up. Always. I know. She hung up. She put the phone on the counter face down. She stood in her kitchen for a long moment with her hands on the edge of the sink and her head bowed slightly, the way a person stands when they have just completed something heavy and have not yet given themselves permission to feel it. Then she straightened up. She picked up the 3 lemons from the counter. She walked to the cutting board. She picked up a knife. And she began slowly, methodically, the way her grandmother had taught her in a kitchen in Eastern Oregon in 1989, to make lemon curd. The clock on the microwave read 10:51 a.m. It was Saturday. The day was not over. But the part of the day that had belonged to other people was finished, and the part that belonged to her was just beginning, and there were 40 lemons on the tree, and she had a recipe to follow, and a kitchen that smelled of citrus and butter and sugar, and a rifle and a safe in the next room that had done its job, and a phone face down on the counter that would not need to ring again until tomorrow. Tuesday would come. The video would post. The world would do what the world does. But this, the curd, the knife, the lemons, the quiet, this was hers. And for the first time in 8 months, Lennox Marie Herov, 41 years old, retired Senior Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy, daughter of Edward and Margaret Herov of Bend, Oregon, stood in her own kitchen in Oceanside, California, and felt, not happy, exactly, but something adjacent to it. Something quieter. Something more durable. Something she had earned this morning, by not being who she used to be. By being instead, simply, the consequence. I want to take you somewhere else for a little while. I want to take you to a house in San Marcos, California. A small house. Stucco. Tile roof. A 2-car garage with a basketball hoop bolted above it that has not had a basketball thrown at it in about 2 years.
A driveway with an oil stain on the right side, where Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker's F-150 sits when it is not somewhere else. A small front yard. A patch of grass that has gone brown in 2 places because the sprinkler heads on the east side of the property have been clogged since August and nobody in the house has gotten around to fixing them. The house belongs to Michael and Sarah Ducker. They have lived in it for 6 years. They bought it in 2018 with a VA loan and a down payment that came partly from Sarah's parents in Bakersfield. There are 2 children in the house. A boy named Tyler, age 8. A girl named Emma, age 5. The children are at Sarah's mother's house in Bakersfield this weekend because Sarah Ducker is taking some time to herself, and the time to herself was scheduled 3 weeks ago, and Sarah Ducker, in 3 weeks of looking forward to this Saturday, did not anticipate the version of Saturday that was about to find her. It is 2:47 p.m. Pacific. Sarah Ducker is 36 years old. She is a registered nurse at Palomar Medical Center in Escondido. She works 3 12-hour shifts a week, Tuesday through Thursday, which means her weekends are technically her own, although the weekends with her husband home have been getting harder for about 2 years now. She does not have a word for what has been getting harder. She has not let herself say the word yet. Today she was planning to read a book in the backyard, drink 1 glass of white wine, take a nap, and not think about anything for 6 straight hours. She has been reading the book for 90 minutes. It is a novel about a woman in Maine who runs a bookstore. Sarah Ducker has read 40 pages. The garage door opens. She looks up. She frowns. Michael is not supposed to be home until 5. He had told her last night that he and the guys were going to shoot at West Haven in the morning and then probably grab lunch, and then he might stop by Hayes's place to watch the Notre Dame game. He had been animated about it. He had been, for the first time in maybe 2 months, in a good mood. She had nodded and smiled and said of fun, and she had meant it, because a Michael in a good mood was an easier Michael to live with than a Michael in a bad mood. It is 2:47 p.m. He is more than 2 hours early. The truck pulls into the garage. The engine shuts off. The garage door begins to roll back down. She hears the driver's door open. She hears it close. She does not hear footsteps for a moment. Then she does. They are slow. They are not the footsteps of a man in a good mood. The interior door from the garage opens. Michael steps into the kitchen. He is wearing the same PT shorts and the same Marine Corps Marathon t-shirt he had on at 6:45 this morning, but the shirt is darker under the arms now, and there is a streak of dust on the right thigh of the shorts, and his hat is in his left hand instead of on his head, and he is not looking at her. "Hey," Sarah says, from the back patio. The sliding door is open. He can hear her. He does not answer. "Mike?" He walks to the kitchen sink. He turns on the water. He fills a glass. He drinks it. He fills it again. He drinks it. He sets the glass on the counter. He stands with both hands on the edge of the counter and his head down, and he does not move for what Sarah will later remember as a very long time, although it was probably about 15 seconds. She gets up from her chair. She sets the book on the patio table, face down, with the spine cracked open so she will not lose her place. She walks to the doorway. She does not step into the kitchen. She just stands at the threshold and looks at her husband from 8 feet away.
Mike, what happened? He does not look up.
Mike. Sarah, sit down.
I don't want to sit down. What happened?
Sarah, please sit down. There is something in his voice she has not heard before. Not in 7 years of marriage. Not in the 11 years she has known him. It is not anger.
Anger she knows. Anger has a shape with him, and she has learned to read its weather. This is not anger. This is something flatter. Something that has had the air let out of it. Something that has been, in the 4 hours and 46 minutes between 7:59 a.m. and 2:45 p.m., slowly punctured. She sits down at the kitchen island. She puts her hands flat on the counter. She waits. He does not tell her right away. He stands at the sink for another minute, maybe 2. He turns the water on again. He turns it off. He runs his hand through his hair. He turns around. He leans against the counter. He looks at the floor. He looks at her. He looks at the floor. He says,
I did something this morning.
Sarah Ducker, in the small kitchen of her stucco house in San Marcos, on a Saturday afternoon in October, with a half glass of white wine still on the patio table behind her, and a book about a bookstore in Maine still face down with its spine cracked,
felt the floor move under her in a way it had not moved since her father called her in 2009 to tell her that her brother had been killed in a car accident outside Fresno.
She did not move. She did not change her expression. She had learned, in 7 years of marriage to a Marine, to receive bad news without flinching.
Tell me,
she said. And he did.
He did not tell her all of it. He told her about 70% of it. He told her there had been a woman on the range. He told her he had been trying to give her some pointers, and that she had taken it the wrong way. He told her that he had moved her rifle, not picked it up, not held it, not dropped it, moved it, and that the rifle may have gotten scratched. He told her that the woman had then performed. That was the word he used, performed. And that one of the guys was filming it on his phone for a laugh. And that now there might be some heat coming from the range about it. He left out the word sweetheart.
He left out the word Barbie. He left out the spit on the concrete. He left out the kick of the ammunition box.
He left out the part where the woman had described his entire career to him in 3 sentences and told him, in the voice of a person who had killed strangers for the government, that he had one option remaining, and that the option was to tell his wife the truth before 5 p.m. It was now 2:53 p.m.
He had used up the option.
Sarah Ducker listened to her husband's 70% version. She did not interrupt. She did not ask questions. When he was finished, she sat for a moment in silence, looking at her hands on the counter, and then she said one sentence.
Mike,
show me the video.
He blinked. What video? the one of the guys was filming on his phone for a laugh. I want to see it. Sarah, show me the video, Michael. He did not have the video. The video was on Lance Corporal Brennan's phone, and Brennan was, at this exact moment, in his barracks room at Camp Pendleton, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the 4-minute and 17-second clip on his screen, with his thumb hovering over the share button on Reddit, on the subreddit r/USMC, which had 340,000 subscribers and a moderator team that did not, as a rule, take down videos of staff sergeants behaving badly. Brennan would hit share at 3:31 p.m. Pacific. But Sarah Ducker did not know that yet. Sarah Ducker knew only that her husband did not have the video, and that the absence of the video told her, in the way the absence of a thing can sometimes tell you more than the presence of it, that the 70% version she had just been given was the version, and that the missing 30% was the part she would have to find out from somewhere else. She got up from the island. She walked past him, without touching him, to the bedroom. She closed the door. She did not lock it. She did not need to. The closed door, between Michael Ducker and his wife, on a Saturday afternoon in October 2024, was a door that he understood. For the first time in his marriage, he was not going to be allowed to open without permission. He stood in the kitchen for a long time after she closed the door. He did not call his Marines. He did not call his mother. He did not turn on the television. He sat down at the kitchen island, in the chair his wife had just vacated, and he put his head in his hands, and he stayed that way for the better part of an hour, while across the country, in a Home Depot parking lot in Stafford, Virginia, a 54-year-old retired sergeant major named Bob Walsh was sitting in the cab of his pickup truck and reading a text message from his son for the 4th time. I want to take you to Bob Walsh's truck for a minute. Bob is in the parking lot of the Home Depot at Aquia Town Center. He is in a 2017 Ford F-250 that he bought used in 2020 with a lump sum payment from the sale of a piece of property in North Carolina that his father left him. He has the windows down because it is 68 degrees and clear in Stafford, Virginia, and Bob Walsh, after 28 years in the Marine Corps, has a small physiological aversion to air conditioning that he does not bother to explain to anyone. His phone is in his right hand. The text from his youngest son is on the screen. It came in at 2:14 p.m. Eastern, which was 11:14 a.m. Pacific, and Bob has read it now 4 times. I think I need to call you tonight. Something happened. Bob Walsh has 3 children. The oldest, a daughter, is a pediatric nurse in Norfolk. The middle, a son, is a junior at Virginia Tech studying mechanical engineering. The youngest, Devin, is a Marine. Devin is the only one of the 3 who followed his father into the service. Devin is the one Bob worries about. Not because Devin is weaker than the other 2. Because Devin is, in the way youngest children sometimes are, the one who feels things hardest, and who would, in Bob Walsh's professional opinion, make either a very good Marine for a very long time or a very damaged one for the rest of his life, and which one it would be depended, in part, on the men Devin ended up serving under in his first 3 years. Devin's first staff sergeant at Weapons Training Battalion was a man named Michael Ducker. Bob Walsh had not met Michael Ducker. Bob Walsh had heard the name twice, in passing, from his son, in phone calls over the previous 4 months. The first time, in June, Devin had mentioned that his new staff sergeant was kind of intense. The second time, in August, Devin had mentioned that his staff sergeant was the kind of guy who is funny until he isn't. Bob Walsh, when he heard that second sentence, had filed it away in the part of his brain that he had used for 28 years to keep track of bad NCOs. He had not acted on it. He had not even mentioned to Devin that he had noticed it. He had simply, on a Tuesday morning in August, sitting at his kitchen table in Stafford, made a small mental note. Ducker, Michael, SSGT, Weapons Training Battalion, Pendleton, watch this. He had been watching for 2 months. He had hoped, the way fathers hope, that he was wrong. The text on his phone, in the Home Depot parking lot, told him he had not been wrong. He put the phone down on the passenger seat. He looked out the windshield at the rear of a minivan parked in front of him. The minivan had a bumper sticker on it that said, "My child is an honor student at Garrisonville Elementary." Bob Walsh stared at that bumper sticker for a long time without seeing it. Then he picked up the phone again. He did not call his son. He had told himself, at 2:15 p.m., that he would wait until Devin called him. Devin had said, "Tonight." Bob would respect. "Tonight." He would not push. Pushing was how you made your kids stop telling you things. But he was not going to do nothing in the meantime. He scrolled through his contacts. He found a name. The name was Pendergrass Tom. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Pendergrass, United States Marine Corps. Currently the Executive Officer of Weapons Training Battalion at Camp Pendleton. Bob Walsh had known Tom Pendergrass since they were both lieutenants at the basic school in Quantico in 1991. Tom had been a groomsman at Bob's wedding in 1996. Bob had been at Tom's daughter's baptism in 2003. They talked twice a year, on Christmas Eve and on the Marine Corps birthday, which was 28 days away. Bob was about to make a third call. He hit the name. He put the phone to his ear. It rang twice. "Bob?" "Tom." "Holy hell! You okay? You don't call me in October." "Tom, I need to ask you a quiet question. Off the record. It's about one of your staff sergeants." There was a pause on the other end of the line. The pause was the pause of a Marine lieutenant colonel recognizing the tone of voice of a Marine sergeant major he had known for 33 years. Tom Pendergrass had been the executive officer of Weapons Training Battalion for 14 months. He had 2,160 Marines under his battalion's roof. He knew most of them by sight. He knew his staff NCOs by name. He knew, when an old friend called him on a Saturday in October to ask a quiet question about a staff sergeant, that the staff sergeant in question was probably one of the 4 or 5 he had already, in 14 months, flagged in his own head. "Bob, tell me the name and I will tell you what I can tell you." "Ducker. Michael. Staff Sergeant." There was a longer pause. "Bob. Tom. Hold on a second. I am at my daughter's soccer game. I need to step away from the field. Hold on."
Bob held on. He listened, on the other end of the line, to the sounds of a man getting up from a folding chair, walking across grass, walking across pavement, getting into a car, closing the door, taking a breath. "Okay, I'm in my car. Bob, what do you have?" Tom: "Devin is at weapons training. He's a lance corporal. 6 months in. Ducker is his staff sergeant." "Oh. Yeah. Bob, I did not know that. I should have known that. I'm sorry." Tom: "There's no reason you would have known it. There are 2,000 Marines under your roof. My kid is one of them." "That is not your problem. That is my problem. Now I am making it our problem because I just got a text from Devin 20 minutes ago that says something happened today and I need to call you tonight." And Devin does not send texts like that. Devin has sent me 2 texts like that in his entire life. The first one was when his grandfather died. I do not know what the second one is yet. I will know tonight. Before I know tonight, I would like to know, from you, off the record, friend to friend, whether Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker is the kind of staff sergeant that would have caused that text to be sent. Just that. Just your read. The pause on the other end of the line was the longest one yet. Bob Walsh, who had been a sergeant major for the last 6 years of his career, knew the texture of that pause. It was the pause of a senior officer deciding how much to say to a friend who was no longer in his chain of command, about a Marine still in it, on a Saturday in October, on a cell phone, in a parking lot, with his daughter's soccer game playing in the background. Tom Pendergrass said, "Bob, I am going to tell you one thing, and then I am going to tell you a second thing, and you can decide what to do with both of them." "Go ahead." "The first thing is, yes. 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 That is the kind of staff sergeant. I have had 3 complaints across my desk about Ducker in the last 11 months. 2 were from Marines in his section. One was from a civilian range master at Camp Pendleton's recreational range. None of the 3 rose to the level of formal charges. All 3 are in his file. I have spoken to his company commander about him twice. He has been on, let's say, adjusted supervision for 4 months. Whatever Devin is about to tell you tonight, Bob, I want you to hear me. Whatever Devin is about to tell you tonight, I want to know it. Not just as your friend, as his XO. I want the full account. Because I have been waiting for the 4th thing, Bob, and I have a strong feeling that the 4th thing has just happened." Bob Walsh closed his eyes in the cab of his F-250 in the Home Depot parking lot in Stafford, Virginia. Tom: "What is the second thing?" "The second thing, Bob, is that I am going to be in my office at 0700 Monday morning, Pacific time. I would like to take a phone call at 0730 Pacific time, which is 10:30 your time, from Lance Corporal Devin Walsh on a recorded line, with the battalion sergeant major also on the call. I would like Devin to give a statement. I would like him to give it voluntarily. I would like you to not be on the line, Bob, because if you are on the line, it is your statement and not his, and I need his. I would like to ask you to convey that request to your son tonight after he gives you his version, and to tell him that the request is from the executive officer of his battalion,
and that the request is, strongly, a request. Will you do that for me?"
"Yes." "Bob." "Yes, Tom. I am sorry that this is happening to your boy." "It is not happening to my boy, Tom. My boy is going to be fine. It is happening to a woman somewhere today who Ducker did something to. And it is happening to Ducker. It is just happening to my boy in the sense that he had to watch it. Devin will be all right." "I know he will, Bob. He's your son. He's his mother's son, Tom. That's why he'll be all right."
Tom Pendergrass, on the other end of the line, in a car in a parking lot in Oceanside, laughed once, a small, dry laugh that had 33 years of friendship in it.
"Talk Monday, Bob."
"Talk Monday, Tom."
"And Tom?"
"Yeah."
"Thank you."
"Thank me when it's done." They hung up. Bob Walsh sat in his truck for a long time after that. He did not start the engine. He did not buy the garden hose. He looked at the bumper sticker on the minivan, and he thought about his son, and he thought about his wife of 29 years, whose name was Patricia, and who was at home right now in their kitchen making chili, and who did not yet know that the rest of the weekend was going to be different from the one they had planned. He started the truck at 3:11 p.m. Eastern. He drove home. It was a 16-minute drive. He did not turn on the radio. When he got home, he walked into the kitchen, and Patricia looked up from the cutting board where she was dicing onions, and she saw his face, and she put the knife down, and she said,
"Robert."
"What?" And Bob Walsh, 54 years old, 28-year Marine, retired Sergeant Major, said,
"Patty, Devin's okay, but it's going to be a long night. I think I need a beer, and I need you to sit with me on the porch."
And Patricia Walsh, who had been the wife of a Marine for 29 years and the daughter of a Marine before that, took off her apron, washed her hands, got 2 beers out of the refrigerator, walked out to the back porch with her husband, and sat down next to him in the same wicker chair she had been sitting in for the last 8 years of evenings like this. She did not ask him to start. She just sat. And after a while he did. 3 days pass. I am going to skip them, because the 3 days between Saturday afternoon and Tuesday evening are not the story. The 3 days are administrative. They are the slow grinding of 2 machines that had begun at approximately the same hour on Saturday, to turn against the same man from 2 different directions. The first machine was institutional. Lance Corporal Devin Walsh called his battalion's executive officer at 0730 Pacific Time on Monday morning on a recorded line, with the battalion sergeant major also present, and gave a 43-minute statement. The statement was detailed. The statement was unembellished. The statement was, in the words of Lieutenant Colonel Tom Pendergrass, who had taken a great many statements in a long career, the cleanest sworn account by a junior Marine I have heard in 8 years. The statement was transcribed, signed, and entered into the formal investigation that had been opened at 0800 Monday morning by the battalion commander, a colonel named Reyna Ortiz, who had been briefed by her XO at 0650 Pacific Time,
and who had, upon hearing the briefing, said one sentence to her XO that I will not transcribe here because it was profane, but which can be summarized as finally. By Monday afternoon, the 4 cameras at West Haven Shooting Sports had been subpoenaed by the San Diego County Sheriff's Office, with full cooperation from Ray Castellanos, who had personally delivered the encrypted USB drive containing the relevant footage to Sergeant Diane Ramirez at the Vista substation, along with the manila folder containing his 14-month internal file on Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker, along with a notarized witness statement from himself and a second one from Master Chief Cameron Brooks, retired, who had driven over to Ray's house Sunday afternoon to write his out in longhand on a yellow legal pad on Ray's kitchen table, while Ray's wife Maria poured them both coffee and pretended not to listen. By Monday evening, copies of the West Haven footage, the Ray Castellanos file, the Cameron Brooks witness statement, and the Devin Walsh sworn statement were all on Lieutenant Colonel Pendergrass's desk at Weapons Training Battalion. By Tuesday morning, Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker had been temporarily removed from his duties pending investigation, escorted to a holding office, and informed that his common access card was being suspended. That was the institutional machine. It moved exactly as fast as institutional machines move when senior people decide they want them to move, which is, when the conditions are right, surprisingly fast. The second machine was the public one, and the public one moved faster. Lance Corporal Brennan posted the 4-minute, 17-second video to our /USMC at 3:31 p.m. Pacific on Saturday, anonymously, under the title "Saw Something Today I Can't Stop Thinking About." He included a short comment underneath. The comment said, "I was there. The woman didn't do anything wrong. I'm not gonna say more. Watch the video." The video had 11,000 upvotes by Saturday night. By Sunday morning it had been mirrored to our /military, our /guns, our /long range, our /veterans, and 3 other subreddits. It had been downloaded by approximately 400 people, including a gunsmith in Boise, Idaho, who watched it at 6:47 a.m. Mountain Time on Sunday morning, sitting at his kitchen table in his bathrobe with his prosthetic leg leaning against the chair next to him, while his wife Teresa stood behind him with her hand on his shoulder and watched it over the top of his head. Marcus Holloway watched the video 3 times in a row without saying anything. The third time, he paused it. The frame on the screen showed Lennox Herov in her red windbreaker, holding her thermos of coffee in her left hand, looking up at Ray Castellanos in the tower with the smallest possible expression on her face. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. The kind of micro-expression that a person who has spent 20 years controlling her face produces involuntarily once every 4 or 5 years, when something amuses her despite herself. Marcus stared at that frame for a long time. Then he said, quietly, to no one in particular, to Teresa standing behind him, to the kitchen, to the prosthetic leg leaning against the chair, to the country that did not know who Lennox Herov was. "There you are, sister?" Teresa squeezed his shoulder. "You gotta do what she asked." "Yeah." "Even though you don't want to." "Even though I don't want to. Especially because I don't want to. The thing she asked is the right thing.
The thing I want to do is the easy one.
She would not have called me if she wanted the easy one. Teresa kissed the top of his head. She walked to the coffee pot. She poured him a fresh cup.
Write it good, baby.
I will. He wrote the script Sunday afternoon. He recorded the narration Monday night. He edited the video Tuesday morning. He showed the final cut to Teresa at 4 p.m. Tuesday in his garage, and she watched it once through without speaking, and at the end she nodded one time and said,
Post it.
He posted it at 7:02 p.m. Mountain Time on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. The slot his regulars expected. The title of the video was simple. It said,
You don't touch another shooter's rifle. Ever.
The thumbnail was not a face. It was a photograph of a rifle on concrete. The video was 9 minutes and 40 seconds long. 3 minutes of Brennan's phone footage, cut and color corrected, with the audio cleaned up. 2 minutes of footage from Ray's cameras, released by the sheriff's office on Monday afternoon, blurred carefully over the woman's face. 4 minutes and 40 seconds of Marcus Holloway on camera in his garage, in a clean blue work shirt, talking to the lens the way he had taught himself to talk to the lens over 5 years of practice, calm, slow, deliberate, with the kind of authority that does not raise its voice because it does not need to. He told the story exactly the way Lennox had asked him to. He did not say her name. He did not show her face. He did not say Navy, and he did not say Coronado, and he did not say sniper, and he did not say career. He said a woman. He said a shooter. He said a person on a public range, in this country, on a Saturday morning, with a rifle that belonged to her, and a body that belonged to her, and a right to be there that belonged to her. He talked about the rule. The one rule. You do not touch another shooter's rifle. He talked about what the rule meant. He talked about why the rule existed. He talked about the men, in his 15 years of competitive precision shooting, who had broken the rule, and what had happened to each of them, and why none of those stories had been about gender until this one, and why this one was, and why it was important to be honest about that. He talked about Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker by name. He showed his face from the West Haven footage. He showed his rank insignia. He said the name of his battalion. He did not call him a coward. He did not call him a bully. He did not editorialize. He simply identified him by name and rank and unit and said, "This is the man who did this." The institution that employs him is now aware. The institution will handle its part. My part on this channel is to tell you what happened, so that the next time you see a man who looks like this on a range you are on, you will recognize what you are looking at, and you will not let it stand. The video, by Wednesday morning, had 400,000 views. By Wednesday night, it had 1.1 million. By Friday, it had crossed 3 million, and it had been picked up by a writer at Task and Purpose, and by a former Marine columnist at the San Diego Union-Tribune, and by a podcaster in Texas with 200,000 listeners, all of whom credited Marcus Holloway as the source, and all of whom, following Marcus's lead, did not name the woman. The institution, in the meantime, did its work. On Thursday morning,
October 17th, at 0800 Pacific Time, Staff Sergeant Michael Ducker was informed by his company commander, in the presence of his battalion sergeant major and a JAG officer, that he was being processed for separation from the United States Marine Corps under the provisions of Marine Corps Order 1900.16 on the basis of substantiated misconduct, including but not limited to failure to safely handle a firearm in a civilian environment, conduct unbecoming a non-commissioned officer, and a pattern of harassment towards subordinates and civilians established by a preponderance of evidence including video footage, sworn statements, and prior documented incidents. The separation would not be honorable. It would be other than honorable. It would mean no pension. It would mean no via home loan benefits. It would mean, in the bureaucratic language of the order, that Michael Ducker, 34 years old, with 12 years of service, would be returned to civilian life on a Friday in December with a duffel bag, a paycheck for accrued leave, and a discharge characterization that would, for the rest of his working life, follow him into every background check and every job application. He would not be charged criminally. The San Diego County Sheriff's Office, after reviewing the West Haven footage and the witness statements, would decline to file charges on the basis that the property damage to the rifle had been assessed by an independent gunsmith at $1,400, below the felony threshold in California, and on the basis that the woman, who would have been the complaining witness, had, when contacted, declined to press charges. She had declined to press charges in a phone call to Sergeant Diane Ramirez on Wednesday afternoon, in which she had said, in a quiet voice from a kitchen in Oceanside, "Sergeant, the institution is doing what the institution should do. The public is doing what the public should do. I do not need the courts to do a third thing. I would like, with respect, to be left out of the third thing. Is that possible?" And Sergeant Ramirez, who had been a deputy for 14 years and a sergeant for 6 and had seen, in that time, every possible way a victim could choose to engage or not engage with the system, said, "Ma'am, that is possible. Thank you for calling. I'll close my file. Thank you, Sergeant. Ma'am, may I ask one thing?" "You may." "Are you all right?" There was a pause on the line. Sergeant Ramirez heard, faintly, in the background, the sound of a knife on a cutting board. "Sergeant, I am making dinner. I am all right." "Okay, ma'am. You take care." "You too, Sergeant." That was Wednesday. Thursday was the separation paperwork. Friday was the task and purpose article. The article was titled, "What Happened on a Civilian Range in October?" and it was 3,400 words, and it did not name the woman either, because the reporter, a former enlisted Marine herself named Jess Hopper, had called Marcus Holloway before publishing, and Marcus had said, "Please, on behalf of someone you have not met, do not name her," and Jess Hopper, who understood the request without needing it explained, had not. The article ran on Friday morning. It was the most read piece on task and purpose that week. In the article, there was a single sentence, embedded in the third to last paragraph, almost in passing, that read, "The woman, who is asked not to be identified, is described by those who know her as a retired military professional
who would prefer the story to be about the man, not about her.
That sentence was, in the end, the sentence that did the most work. Because every reader who read it understood, instantly, what kind of woman it was describing. And every reader, in understanding that, chose, without being asked, without being instructed, in the quiet, civilian, voluntary way that whole communities sometimes choose things, to honor the request. She was never named. Not in the article. Not in the comments under the video. Not in the Union Tribune piece. Not in the podcast in Texas. Not on r/USMC, where Brennan's original post had by then accumulated 41,000 upvotes and 3,000 comments. Not in a single piece of coverage, anywhere, in any forum, ever. The community closed around her like water closing around a stone. She had asked. They had heard her. That was Friday. On Tuesday, the video posted 6 days earlier, before any of this had crystallized, Lennox Marie Herov was in her front yard, on her knees, in a pair of canvas gardening pants and a faded blue t-shirt, with a wide-brimmed straw hat on her head and a small pair of pruning shears in her right hand. She was pruning the lemon tree. She had picked all 40 lemons over the weekend. She had made 9 jars of lemon curd on Saturday and Sunday. She had given 3 of them to Ray Castellanos' wife Maria, who had cried a little when Lennox handed them over at Ray's front door on Sunday afternoon, for reasons that had nothing to do with curd. She had mailed 1 jar to Marcus and Teresa in Boise, packed carefully in bubble wrap in a small box, with a handwritten card that said thank you. The rifle shoots beautifully. L. She had kept the other 5 jars for herself, in a row on the top shelf of her pantry, lined up like small yellow soldiers. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, she was pruning the tree. The tree needed it. She had been putting it off for 2 months. It was 3:47 p.m. Pacific. The video would post in 2 hours and 15 minutes. She was not thinking about the video. She was thinking about the tree. She was thinking about the angle of each cut. She was thinking about the small green new growth at the tips of 3 of the branches, and about whether to cut them back or leave them. She had her father's voice in her head from a summer afternoon in 1991 telling her, "You don't prune to make the tree look nice. You prune so the tree knows where it's going next year." Her phone rang in the pocket of her gardening pants. She did not answer right away. She finished the cut she was making. She set the shears down on the gravel path. She wiped her hands on her pants. She took out the phone. The number on the screen was a 760 area code. San Diego County. She did not recognize the rest of the digits. She let it ring twice more. She answered, "This is Lennox." There was a small pause, then a woman's voice. The voice was steady, but the steadiness was the kind that costs something, the kind a person produces by deciding, in the half-second before they speak, that they are going to produce it. Am I speaking with the woman who was at West Haven on Saturday?" Lennox closed her eyes for a moment under the brim of her straw hat. She did not ask how the woman had gotten her number. There were 3 ways the woman could have gotten her number. None of the three was a violation. All three would have come through Ray Castellanos, who would not have given out her number to anyone he did not trust completely.
Yes. My name is Sarah Ducker. I am Michael Ducker's wife.
Lennox opened her eyes. She looked at the lemon tree. She looked at the gravel path. She looked at her hands, dirty with the dust of the citrus bark. She did not say anything for a moment, because she was, for the first time in 5 days, genuinely surprised, and she had learned a long time ago not to speak in the first 3 seconds after surprise. Mrs. Ducker.
Sarah. Sarah, I am listening. I am not calling to ask you to drop anything. I am not calling on behalf of my husband. He does not know I am calling. He would not approve of me calling. I am calling because I have watched the video from the range 3 times in the last 48 hours on my phone in the bathroom of my mother's house in Bakersfield, where I have been since Sunday night with our 2 children.
And I have read everything the Marine Corps has sent my husband, which he has shown to me on Monday morning in our kitchen before I packed the car and drove to my mother's. And I have spent 5 days thinking about what to say to you, if I ever found a way to say anything to you at all. And I have decided that what I want to say is one thing that has nothing to do with the legal situation or his career or our marriage or anything that is your responsibility to care about. May I say it?
You may.
There was a small breath on the line.
Thank you.
Lennox waited.
Thank you,
Sarah Ducker said again,
for the way you did it.
Thank you for not naming me in the video. Thank you for not naming the kids. Thank you for telling him in your kitchen, in the parking lot on that range, that I existed, that I was a person. I have watched the part where you tell him to call me before 5 p.m. He did not call me. He came home at 2:45 and told me a version that was a lie. But you knew he would. You knew before he did. And you still told him to. You still made the option exist. And I want you to know, I needed you to know, before any more time passes, that I see what you did. I see what you tried to give him. I see that you tried to give me a husband who could choose to be honest, for one afternoon before the world made him be. He did not take it. That is not your fault. That is his. But you offered it. And I have been a nurse for 14 years, and I have seen a lot of people in a lot of bad moments. And I want you to know that what you did in those 4 seconds where you offered him the option to call me, that was the kindest thing anyone has done for me in 7 years of marriage. I am not going to thank you for ruining his career, because that is not what you did. He did that. I am thanking you for the 4 seconds. That is all. That is what I called to say. Lennox was kneeling on the gravel path. She had not moved during the entire speech. Her right hand was on the gravel, palm down. Her left hand held the phone to her ear. The straw hat had tipped slightly forward over her eyes. The lemon tree was in front of her, half pruned. The afternoon sun was on her shoulders. She did not cry. She had not cried about any of this, and she was not going to start. But something in her chest moved sideways, the way a thing moves when it has been holding still for too long. She said,
Sarah. Yes. Are you safe?" There was a small laugh on the line. It was a laugh with no humor in it, but it was not a bitter laugh either. It was the laugh of a 36-year-old woman with 2 children in a guest bedroom in Bakersfield who had not let herself laugh in 5 days. "I am safe. He is not violent. He has never been violent toward me or the children. He is what he is." You saw him on Saturday. You saw what he is. He is going to be very angry for a long time, and then he is going to have to figure out who he is without the uniform, and I do not know whether that man is going to be someone I can stay married to. I do not know yet. I have time. I have my mother. I have my job. I have the kids. I have time to figure it out. You have time. I do. Sarah, I want to tell you one thing. You did not ask for it. You may not want it. But I am going to say it anyway, and then I am going to let you go. Okay. The thing you just did, calling a stranger you do not know on a Tuesday afternoon to thank her for 4 seconds of a Saturday morning that destroyed your life, that is not a small thing. That is a thing that a person with a great deal of structural integrity does. You have structural integrity, Sarah. I could hear it in the first sentence you spoke. Whatever you decide, in the next 6 months or a year or however long you need, about your marriage and your family and your life, you are going to be all right. Not because it will be easy. It will not be easy. But because the person who made this phone call is a person who can do hard things in the right order. I want you to remember, when it gets bad, that a stranger heard you for 90 seconds on a Tuesday and could tell. Will you remember that? There was a silence on the line. It was a long silence. Lennox waited through it. Sarah Ducker said, very quietly, "I will." Good. Thank you. Sarah. Yes. Take care of those kids. I will. Goodbye. Goodbye. The line went dead. Lennox Herov knelt on the gravel path in front of her half-pruned lemon tree for a long time after that. She did not move. She did not put the phone back in her pocket. She held it loosely in her left hand against the dirt of the path, and she looked at the tree, and she thought about a woman in a kitchen in Bakersfield, and a woman in a kitchen in Stafford, Virginia, and a wife in Coronado named Linda Brooks, and her own mother, Margaret Herov, 71 years old, still alive, still in Bend, Oregon, who had buried a husband 12 years ago, and a brother 18 years before that, and who would, if Lennox called her tonight, ask only one question: "Are you eating, sweetheart?" And would not need the answer to be true, only to be offered. She thought about all of these women. She thought about how the story, in the end, was not about the man at all. The man had been the occasion. The story was about the women on either side of him, the wife he had lied to, the mother he came from, the women on the range he had pretended did not exist, the woman in Boise who had stood behind a man who built rifles and said, "Write it good, baby," the woman in Oregon who had taught a girl to stand in a kitchen and not be afraid of what came through the door, and about the long, quiet, mostly invisible network they formed across a country that mostly did not know it existed. She thought about her father. she thought. Dad, the tree needs another 20 minutes. She put the phone in her pocket. She picked up the shears. She went back to work. The light moved across the yard. The shadow of the tree got longer. At 6 p.m. Pacific, in a small kitchen in Oceanside, a phone on a counter went ping with a notification. Marcus Holloway just uploaded a new video. She heard the ping through the open kitchen window. She did not go inside to look. She knew what it was. She kept pruning. The world could have the video. She had the tree. I want to take you forward in time. Not far. About 13 months. It is November 15th, 2025. A Saturday again. Saturdays are where the important things in this story have happened, and Saturdays are where I am going to leave it. The place is Boise, Idaho. The temperature is 31 degrees Fahrenheit. There is a skin of frost on the grass of a quiet residential street in the northwest part of the city, in a neighborhood called Garden City, where the houses are small, and the yards are deep, and most of the driveways have at least one pickup truck and at least one dog. The sky is a flat, hard, high-altitude blue. The sun is up but not warm. Somewhere down the block a man is running a leaf blower, and somewhere closer a wind chime is moving in the breeze, and the air smells faintly of wood smoke from a chimney 3 houses down. In the driveway of a small green house at the end of the street, a Jeep Wrangler with California plates is parked. The Jeep is 6 years old. The plates are new. The plates were issued in March, when Lennox Marie Herov finished the paperwork on the move and switched her registration. The plates say Idaho, and they say Gem State across the bottom in small white letters, and the number on them is a sequence of letters and numerals that means nothing to anyone except the woman who chose it, which is 7H 1991, which is the year a girl in Bend, Oregon learned from her father how to prune a lemon tree. She does not live in Boise. She lives now in a town called Eagle, 15 minutes northwest of here, in a house with 3 acres and a workshop in the back and a view of the Boise foothills from the kitchen window. She bought the house in February. She moved in March. She has been in it 8 months. She is here this morning at the greenhouse on the quiet street because Marcus and Teresa Holloway are hosting what Teresa has been calling, in a series of text messages over the last 3 weeks, a small thing, not a party, just some people. There are 11 people inside the house. The 11 people include Marcus and Teresa. They include their grown daughter Riley, who is 26, and her husband Daniel, who is 27, and their 8-month-old baby, Ellis, who is asleep in a carrier on Daniel's chest. They include a precision rifle competitor from Twin Falls named Kurt Anderson, who has known Marcus for 12 years. They include a retired Air Force pararescueman named Wendell Pierce, who lives across the street, and who has been Marcus's neighbor since 2014. They include a woman named Janet Holloway, Marcus's mother, age 78, who flew in from Phoenix yesterday, and who is sitting on the couch in the living room with a glass of orange juice and a very direct opinion about everyone she has met today. And they include 2 people who arrived this morning at 9:45 in a rental car from the Boise airport, having flown up from San Diego on the first flight out. A 68-year-old retired Master Chief named Cameron Brooks and his wife Linda. This is the first time Linda Brooks has met Lennox Herov. Linda walked into the house at 9:48 a.m., took off her coat, handed it to Teresa, walked straight across the living room to where Lennox was standing by the kitchen island with a coffee mug in her hand, and said, "You must be Lennox. I have wanted to meet you for 13 months. Come here." And she hugged her. Lennox, who does not generally accept hugs from strangers, accepted this one, because Linda Brooks was not, in the end, a stranger. Linda Brooks was something else. Linda Brooks was the wife of the man who had stood 4 feet behind Lennox's left shoulder on a Saturday morning in October, and the wife of that man is not a stranger. The wife of that man is family by a different definition. They held each other for a long time. Long enough that Cameron, standing by the door, took off his own coat, hung it on the hook, walked into the kitchen, poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot on the counter, and pretended very seriously to read the label on a jar of honey, because he was not entirely sure his face was doing what he wanted it to do. That was an hour ago. Now it is 10:53 a.m. The 11 people are scattered through the house. Janet Holloway is in the kitchen with Teresa, both of them peeling potatoes for the lunch nobody has officially announced is happening, but everyone knows is happening. Riley is on the floor in the living room with her baby, who is now awake. Daniel is in the garage with Marcus and Wendell and Kurt, looking at a rifle Marcus is building for a client in Montana. Cameron and Linda are sitting on the back porch in 2 Adirondack chairs, drinking coffee, talking quietly to each other, the way people who have been married 35 years talk on porches. Lennox is in the front yard. The front yard of Marcus and Teresa's house is small. There is a patch of frostbitten grass. There is a maple tree that has dropped most of its leaves into a pile against the porch railing. There is a stone path from the driveway to the front door. And there is, against the south-facing wall of the garage, in a large terracotta pot that Teresa wheeled out of the basement 2 months ago specifically for this purpose, a small lemon tree. The lemon tree is 2 feet tall. It is a dwarf Meyer. It will not survive winter outside in Idaho. It will go back into the basement in 3 weeks, under a grow light, where it will spend the next 5 months. But for today, on this Saturday in November, with the sun on it and a thermal blanket around the base of the pot, it is allowed to be outside for the same reason that the people inside the house are allowed to gather. Because some things are worth doing even when the climate does not technically support them. The tree has 9 lemons on it. 2 of them are ripe. Teresa has been watching the 2 ripe ones for a week, waiting. Lennox is standing in front of the tree. She has a small pair of pruning shears in her right hand, Teresa's shears, borrowed from the kitchen drawer. She is not pruning. She is just looking at it. She is wearing a pair of dark jeans and a flannel shirt the color of an old brick and a pair of brown leather work boots that her father wore for the last 6 years of his life and that she has been wearing on and off for 12. She is 42 years old. She has put on 5 pounds in the last year, in the way a person puts on weight when they have started eating like a person who lives somewhere instead of a person who is passing through, and the 5 pounds look good on her. Her hair is longer than it was 13 months ago. It is gathered back in a loose tail. There is a small bit of gray at her temples that was not there last October, and a small line at the corner of her mouth that suggests she has been smiling more frequently.
The screen door opens behind her. Cameron Brooks steps out onto the front porch. He is holding his coffee mug. He sees her by the tree. He does not interrupt. He just leans on the porch railing and looks at her across the small yard. She feels him there. She does not turn around for a moment. When she does, she says, "Master Chief." "Senior Chief." "It is good to see you." "It is good to see you too." She walks across the small lawn to the porch. She climbs the 2 steps. She leans on the railing next to him. They both look at the tree. He says, "It's smaller than yours. It's 2 feet tall. Mine in Coronado is 6 feet now. Linda has been spoiling it." "That sounds like Linda." "It does." They stand on the porch for a while. They do not talk. The wind chime down the block keeps moving in the breeze. The baby inside the house laughs at something. Janet Holloway, in the kitchen, says something loudly to Teresa that involves the word paprika, and that makes Teresa laugh. After a long minute, Cameron says, without looking at her, "You all right?" "I'm all right." "You moved." "I moved." "You like it?" "I like it. I like the cold. I like the quiet. I like having a workshop. I like being a 40-minute drive from Marcus. I like that nobody on this street knows what I used to do, and most of them are not going to ask, and the 2 or 3 who do figure it out have been polite enough to not bring it up. I like that the grocery store closes at 9. I like that there is a coffee shop on the corner of Eagle Road and State Street that opens at 6, and that the woman who runs it is named Karen, and she knows my name, and she does not call me ma'am. I like that the lemon tree is in the basement under a light, and that I have to go down and check on it every other day, and that it is the most demanding thing in my life, and it weighs 4 pounds. I like all of it." "Good." "How is Linda?" Linda is teaching a yoga class on Wednesday nights now. At 66. At 66. She came home in August and announced that she had signed up for an instructor course and that I should stop laughing about it. So I stopped laughing about it. She has 14 students. They are all women between 50 and 70. They love her. She comes home on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. with her face flushed and her eyes bright, and she tells me about each of them, one by one, and I sit at the kitchen table and listen, and I think to myself, this is what we were doing all of that for. So she could have this. Lennox looked at him. "Cameron!" "What?" "You are about to make me feel something. Do not make me feel something on a porch in Idaho before lunch." "Apologies, Senior Chief." "Forgiven." They were quiet again. Then she said, "How is the boy?" "Walsh." "Walsh." "He's good. He stayed in. He made corporal in May. He's with a different battalion now, by his own request, working for a gunny named Reyes, different Reyes, no relation, who is exactly the kind of staff NCO that boy needed to find at 22. Bob calls me about once a quarter. He keeps me updated. Devin is going to be fine. Devin is going to be better than fine. The fall is going to make him a better Marine than he would have been without it, and he is going to know, for the rest of his career, what a bad staff sergeant looks like and how to recognize one early. That's not nothing. That's not nothing.
He asked Bob to give you something. Bob asked me to bring it. It's in my jacket. I'll give it to you before we leave. What is it? A letter. Handwritten. 4 pages. I have not read it.
Bob has not read it. Devin wrote it himself. Lennox nodded slowly.
I'll read it tonight. Take your time with it. I will.
The screen door opened. Teresa stepped out, drying her hands on a dish towel. She looked at the two of them on the porch. She said,
You two going to come inside, or am I going to have to bring lunch out to the lawn?
Cameron smiled. He drained the last of his coffee. He pushed off the railing.
Coming, ma'am. 2 minutes, Teresa.
Teresa nodded. She went back inside. Cameron stopped at the door. He turned. He looked at Lennox one more time. He said,
Senior Chief, one last thing. Yes. That morning, on the range, you asked me, while we were loading your Jeep, why I came over, why I crossed from Bay 3.
I told you I would tell you sometime.
You did. It is sometime.
She waited.
My daughter Ashley, she is 40 years old. She lives in Sacramento. She is a high school teacher.
She teaches biology to 9th graders. She is a person who has had to be careful her whole life, in ways I did not understand when she was young, because I was at sea, or I was deployed, or I was at Coronado, and I missed the years when she needed me to understand. I did not get it until she was 24. I have been making up for it since. One of the things I do now, since I retired, is, when I see a woman on a range, by herself, and I see a man like Ducker, I do not stay on my bay. I close my case. I walk over. I stand 4 feet behind her left shoulder. I do not say anything. I just stand there. I have done it 11 times in 7 years. Most of those times, nothing happened. Twice, something happened. You were the second time. The first time, 3 years ago, was a young woman in her 20s at a range in El Cajon, and what happened was much smaller, and I will not tell you about it because it is hers. The reason I do it is Ashley. The reason I will keep doing it until I cannot is Ashley. And the reason I came over to Bay 4 on October 12th, 2024, at 7:46 a.m., before I had any idea who you were or what you were about to do, that was Ashley too. I want you to know that. I have been wanting you to know that for 13 months. I want you to know that I did not come over because I saw a sniper. I came over because I saw a woman. That is what I want you to know. Lennox Marie Herov, on the porch of a small greenhouse in Garden City, Idaho, on a Saturday in November, with the smell of wood smoke in the air and her father's boots on her feet, and a small lemon tree in a terracotta pot 10 yards away. Did finally, for 1 second, allow her face to do the thing it had been refusing to do for 13 months.
She did not cry. She had still not cried about any of this.
But her jaw did one small thing, and her eyes did one small thing, and she reached out, and she put her hand on Cameron Brooks's forearm, the way her father used to put his hand on her shoulder, and she squeezed it once gently. She said,
"Cameron, Senior Chief, tell Ashley thank you." "I will. Tell her her father is a good man. Tell her that a stranger said so, on a porch in Idaho, in November. Tell her that." "I will tell her, Lennox."
He opened the door. He held it for her. She walked through. The screen door closed behind them. In the front yard, the lemon tree stood in its pot in the November sun. The 2 ripe lemons on its lower branches were the color of egg yolk. Teresa would pick them after lunch. She would make a small jar of curd from her grandmother's recipe, which she had gotten by text message from Lennox in February. She would give the jar to Linda Brooks before Linda and Cameron flew home tomorrow. The jar would travel to Coronado in Linda's carry-on, wrapped in a T-shirt. It would sit on the counter of a kitchen, in a house where a man and a woman had been married for 35 years, for 11 days. And then, on a Wednesday night in late November, after Linda came home from teaching her yoga class to 14 women between 50 and 70, Cameron Brooks would spread it on a piece of toast at the kitchen table, and he would take one bite, and he would look across the table at his wife of 35 years, and he would not say anything at all. He would just nod once. And Linda Brooks would nod back. And that small, quiet, almost invisible exchange between 2 people in a kitchen over a jar of lemon curd made by a woman in Idaho they had met once on a porch on a Saturday in November, that, in the end, is the shape of the country I have been describing to you for the last 2 hours. A country mostly held together by people you have never heard of, doing small things for each other, in kitchens you will never see. I am going to stop telling the story now. I have one more thing to say, and then I am going to let you go. OUTRO Gunny. You just spent 2 hours with me. I want you to think about why. I did not promise you action. I did not promise you a body count. I did not promise you a courtroom or a chase or a twist at the end. I told you, at the beginning of this thing, that I was going to tell you a story about a woman in a parking lot at 7:02 a.m. on a Saturday, and a man who did not know how to read what he was looking at, and 4 seconds of a morning that changed both of their lives. I told you that. And you stayed? You stayed for 2 hours. I want to tell you why I think you stayed. And I want to be careful about it, because I do not want to flatter you, and I do not want to insult you. I just want to be honest with you, the way I have been trying to be honest with you for the last 2 hours. You stayed because somewhere, in the back of your head, you have been waiting your whole life to hear a story in which the person who knows what they are doing does not have to prove it, in which the competent person is not loud, in which the dangerous person does not draw a weapon, in which the woman in the parking lot with the rifle in the back of the Jeep does not have to convince anyone, including herself, that she is who she is. She just is. And the world, eventually, sometimes too slowly, sometimes at a cost, but eventually bends around the fact of her. You stayed because you know, in a place under your ribs that you do not talk about very often, that the country you live in is mostly held together by people like Lennox Herov, and people like Ray Castellanos, and people like Cameron Brooks, and people like Bob Walsh, and people like Marcus Holloway, and people like Sarah Ducker, and not by people like Michael Ducker. No matter how loud Michael Ducker is on any given Saturday. You know that. You have always known that. You needed somebody to say it out loud for 2 hours. You stayed because, somewhere in your own life, there has been a moment, maybe last week, maybe 10 years ago, when somebody handled you the way Michael Ducker handled Lennox. And nobody was 4 feet behind your left shoulder. And nobody walked over from bay 3. And nobody held up an accurate mirror to the person who was hurting you. And you have been carrying that moment around ever since, and a small piece of you, listening to this story, got to imagine that the next time it happened to somebody, maybe to your daughter, maybe to your sister, maybe to your wife, maybe to a stranger in a grocery store, the next time it happened, somebody was going to be there. Somebody was going to do what Cameron did. Somebody was going to stand 4 feet back and not say a word and just be there. You stayed because you want to be that person. And on the days you are not sure you can be, you needed to be reminded that the people who are that person are usually not loud about it. They are usually not even visible. They are mostly just there, in the corner of the bay, reading a snap tube, drinking coffee from a thermos, waiting to see if they will be needed, and if they are, doing the small thing, and if they are not, going home and not telling anyone what they almost did. That is the country. That is the country, friends. And I want you to know, sitting wherever you are sitting, listening to me through whatever speaker or whatever set of headphones, on whatever Saturday morning or Tuesday afternoon or Thursday night this finds you, that you are part of it. You are part of the country I have been describing, not because you have done anything heroic. Most of you have not. Most of us have not. I have not. You are part of it because you listened. You spent 2 hours listening to a story about a woman pruning a lemon tree, and a man who built a rifle in a garage on a leg he was still learning to live without, and a wife of 35 years who teaches yoga on Wednesday nights, and a Lance Corporal named Devin Walsh who is going to be all right. You did not have to. There are 1,000 things you could have been listening to instead. You chose this one. You stayed through the slow parts. You stayed through the parts where nothing happened. You stayed through the part about lemon curd. That is what makes you part of it. The country is held together by people who choose to pay attention to stories like this one on Saturdays when nobody is making them. It is held together, in other words, by people like you. So thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being the kind of person who would. The country is in better shape than the loud people tell you it is, because the loud people do not know about you. The loud people do not know about Ray Castellanos, and they do not know about Cameron Brooks, and they do not know about the 11 people in a small greenhouse in Garden City, Idaho, on a Saturday in November, peeling potatoes and passing a baby around and looking at a 2-foot lemon tree in a terracotta pot. But I know. And now you know. Go take care of somebody today. Doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be loud. Stand 4 feet behind somebody's left shoulder, in whatever the version of that is in your life. Don't tell them you did it. Just do it. That is the whole sermon. This is Gunny. Sun up. Snap tube down. I'll see you next Saturday.